Are you ready, Mr. Mkwena?
We are ready, Chair.
Before you proceed, Mr. Dugwana, just to maybe wrap up what you may have to say about the spreadsheet. Is it correct to understand the spreadsheet to have been part of a conversation between two partners in the same joint venture or co-directors or people in the same project, Mr. Mbambani to Mr. Sodi?
Yes, will be correct.
So the one was writing to the other,
Making aware, the other aware of how the money was spent.
how the money was either planned to be divided and how part of it may have been already paid. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Tukwana, we have exhausted that topic. Can we move on to page 18? Page 18, Chair. In those paragraphs apparent from that page, you seem to be making very strong statements. Do you wish to summarize for the Chair what you are conveying in those paragraphs? And take us please through paragraph 53 to 58.
Chairperson, with the information that we have presented today and many others, one, I submit that the involvement of Mr. Magashule in this asbestos audit heist makes him unfit to hold public office or the office of the Secretary General of the ANC. Mr. Magashule's suitable place of abode in public is a jail cell. If our law enforcement agencies were well oiled, Mr. Magashule and all those aided and abetted this asbestos audit heist should be doing time in jail. To date, no eradication of asbestos roofs has been carried out in any township in the Free State to asbestos roofed house, and yet 255 million has been advanced to Blackhead Consulting joint venture, and the 77 million of the state fund is a subject of a litigation in our courts, and our law enforcement agencies are doing nothing. I invite the Commission to investigate and subpoena the provincial head of the Department of Housing, Mr. Tim Thabo Mkhesi, the Chief Finance Officer at the time, the head of supply chain in the department, and the then MEC of Human Settlement. Mr. Magashule, as Premier at the time, Ms. Cholota and Ms. Murake, should be no exceptions. The MEC of Finance in the Free State at the time and Head of Treasury at the time have some explanation to do also. Memukwena should come to the Commission to explain the circumstances that led her to request funding from Mr. Magashule for her daughter's education abroad. The Office of the Auditor General in the Free State will be a great resource to the Commission. The Commission and the people of South Africa, in particular the Free State, deserve to know the truth about this asbestos audit heist. The Commission would also do well to subpoena government officials who were at the helm at the time of this process. And in this case, I mentioned a number of people in the department, but I must state that I'm not suggesting that the persons at the National Department of Human Settlement cited above were involved in the asbestos audit heist. Methinks the asbestos audit heist would not have occurred without their knowledge. What begs the question is why this project was undertaken only in the Free State. Asbestos roofed houses are found in all provinces. If in the Free State alone 255 million rand was spent for a purported house asbestos audit, how much of the amount was from the public purse?
The nation.
I beg yours?
The National Public Purse.
from the National Public Purse via the National Department of Human Settlement. I have a reasonable belief that the Free State government under Mr. Magashule was the only fertile ground in the country for this asbestos audit heist to be staged and executed. The Commission should also commission an audit to be conducted on any payments made from Blackhead Consulting joint venture to any persons or private entities. Further, the Commission ought to investigate if ever there were municipalities and other organs of state in the Free State that were contracted to either Blackhead Consulting or Diamond Hill joint venture.
Yes. The paragraphs on page 20, paragraph 63 and 64, you've already alluded to that litigation to the chair. We don't need to deal with those allegations anymore.
Yes.
Now, can we move on to deal with a new topic in your statement, which you introduced from page 20 and paragraph with reference to paragraph 65. You are also referring to...
Maybe before that, Mr. Mkwena. So in regard to the asbestos eradication project, are you saying, as a matter of fact, that actually no asbestos was removed from houses, or are you saying they may have removed it from some houses, but certainly not as many as they were meant to do in terms of 300 housing units?
Chairperson, it is clear from the records that we have presented that the intention was just to do the audit, and that was it. That was done. The part of the eradication of this would have been the other, as I say, the other project. But in as far as this, and in terms of the instructions that were received from the department, it was for the audit of the 300,000 houses at 850 rand per unit, totaling 255 million for that alone. And this is what was done. And if you check even in the report here, that the period, I thought that the evidence leader would also, just for the record, the report itself that they submitted. And if you check the period that the contract was from the 1st of December, and it ended, and the report, the final report was given in February. Now, if you look at that only, 255 million was paid for a project that took December, January, and then February, and everything was done. So there was no eradication of these or removal of these asbestos house, meaning besides the fact that they made an appeal that this would help in terms of the well-being of the people of the Free State, but the money is spent, the money is lost, and our own people in the Free State who are still in these asbestos roofed houses, still experiencing the same conditions even before the haste that this project was dealt with in the first place. That is why when I indicated there was no agency, they should have gone through the processes and invited other people to participate in this.
But let me just understand. I may have misunderstood at the beginning. I thought that the 255 million rand, in terms of the letter of appointment at page 94, I thought that the 255 million rand would have included the removal of the actual asbestos roofs, and I guess you can remove without putting in something else and putting in whatever was acceptable. But maybe to think that all of that could have been done on the basis of 255 million rand is not realistic for 300,000 houses. But are you saying that, as you understand the project, the instruction to this joint venture was simply to do the audit, identify which houses had asbestos roofs. You mentioned the assessment as well. Are you saying that your understanding is that the 255 million rand did not go beyond them doing that?
Chairperson, that's why I thought it will be wise if we go to the report and just allow the chairperson to get the glimpse of what the report.
Yes,
In
we
fact,
could,
what
we could
the
go there, but what you can tell me is your own understanding.
Nothing of that sort. My understanding is the report, in fact, in terms of their letter, to the department, it was for the audit as well as for the eradication and the removal of the rubble to a safer place. And what the instruction was also clearly indicated that it was for the audit of the asbestos house.
Okay, just to make sure that we have the same understanding. Your understanding, if I understand you correctly now, your understanding might be the same as mine then. Is the position that as you understand the letter of instruction to perform, the letter at page 94 from the head of department, is your understanding that it was instructing them to do the audit, make the assessment, remove the asbestos, take it to a particular site, and make a replacement on the roofs? Is that your understanding?
Initially, that is what was supposed to be, but if you check the letter, it talks of assessing, auditing, and what did they use the word? If we can go to
I think it's page 94, if my recollection is correct.
Are you looking for the report or the letter?
The letter.
The letter.
It's page 94.
The letter, Chairperson, of the instruction is audit, assess, and GPS all pre-94 housing units in the province. And it says at a rate of 850. So that itself, the instruction in this case, excludes, there's no instruction to remove. It is only to audit, to assess, and GPS all these. At that rate, that is given the 850. And that is what the report then does.
Also says.
Yes.
But I did ask earlier on what GPS means, and I think you gave me an explanation, but I can't remember what is that something they were supposed to do as well, in addition to auditing and assessing, or?
They needed a company that would use whatever instrument
GPS.
just to deal with the identification of where the property is, and then have photos of the property itself,
yes,
unit by unit, only those that have asbestos. So they would be able to assess if they were to remove the roofing, will that not affect the foundation and many other things.
So the reference to GPS is just for the pictures of the houses?
It's just for all that, and that's it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So the whole 255 million rand was effectively for identifying the houses that had asbestos roofs and making an assessment in terms of the letter of appointment.
In terms of the letter of appointment.
Okay, all right. Yes.
Chairperson, you will recall that Mkwena did take Mr. Tukwana to page 96.
Yes.
No, 97. Sorry.
Yes.
And asked Mr. Tukwana to read paragraph 2, which is working relationship.
Yes.
That is the document that relates, that it's an SLA agreement.
Yes.
And if the chairperson have regard to that, it says, where is this? It says the department appoints the service provider to assess, stroke audit housing.
I'm sorry, I'm at 97.
At the bottom,
At
Chair.
the bottom,
Oh,
Chair.
clause 2. Yeah.
Correct, yes. And I think that's what Mr. Tukwana read into record when he was being led by Mr. Mkwena. So it answers the chair's question. And that is why chair has also characterized the whole contract as nonsensical.
Yes.
The letter of appointment says something, the SLA agreement says something, and they relate to the same project.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Tukwana, you'll confirm. It looks like in terms of the 2017 agreement, what they were supposed to do included disposal of asbestos to a certain site, to an approved designated disposal site. But from what you have said, that was not included in the letter of appointment. Is that correct? I haven't gone back to the letter of appointment, but I understood you to be saying that.
This, as I say, this is something, that's why I was saying, it contradicts. If it was done by the lawyers, they would have seen this. This
Yes.
one, on page 97, it says something. It includes the handling and disposal of asbestos sheets, and the only way you can do that is by removing them and then to the designated disposal site. But if you read the instruction that was given, in this case, it was only to assess and then to audit and GPS at that rate that was given. So there was no rate given for the removal and for other things in that letter.
Well, I've just gone back to page 94. It appears that the only paragraph in page 94 where one can find what the HOD was saying this company should do appears in paragraph 1.
Yes.
And it says audit, assess and GPS all pre-1994 government housing units in the province at a rate of 850 rand VAT exclusive per unit, up to a maximum of 300,000 units, in brackets 255 million rand VAT exclusive, hereinafter referred to blah, 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 will be payable for all audited units, and it should be noted that all asbestos units are expected to be audited in the province. So if you say the reference to GPS doesn't involve removing, it would appear that it doesn't say anything about, the letter doesn't say anything about removing.
Yes, it doesn't say.
Okay.
Yes. And the emphasis there, Chair, it's always throughout that paragraph, it's audit, audit, audit.
Sorry, audit.
I'm saying that the emphasis in that paragraph, it's audit, nothing else.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
And I just want to emphasize that, that it says here, the number 1 in page 94, when it reads everything there, the units and the amount of money that will be paid as a total project cost, it says, will be payable for all audited units.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
This means even if that unit that I audit is not an asbestos, it does not have an asbestos roof, you will be paid just by merely mentioning that this house and all those things. So that is where I was saying, Chairperson, it does not make sense for you neither to, that's why we were saying you could have done the assessment yourself, and once you've got the report, you would know exactly how many of these houses that have asbestos roof, and then you then say go and remove them and do 1, 2, 3. So that would be a better way of doing things. But for them to say, for you to do the assessment and also to do the auditing and GPS, you do all the houses. That is why where we say it's actually a scheme in this case. You siphon the money, you use this, the 300,000 units. If you go to the report, you will see that the houses that were said to be having asbestos roofs do not come closer to 300,000. But this one says will be payable for all audited units. And then it goes on to say, and it should be noted that all asbestos units are expected to be audited in the province. Now, that is where I get some difficulties, You say all audited units, and then you say asbestos units are expected to be audited in the province.
So you
My
read-
understanding is,
You read that to include auditing units that might not have asbestos roofs. That's how you read it.
I read it to say the first instruction is, you do audit all the houses, the 300,000. But you must make sure that all units that have asbestos in the Free State are audited.
Maybe let me help you and the chair and refer you to page 43,
23,
43, Chair,
43.
and simply read under that heading that says the field findings.
The field findings, Chairperson, out of a total of all the Free State townships assessed via site visits, the following were discovered. The actual number of residential units that contain asbestos could only be quantified after the physical audit has been done. However, the audited and counted number of residential units containing asbestos is 36,303 stands. And the stands walked and physically and assessed is more or less, or plus and minus 300,000.
So this is the point that we're making, that the only one that we assessed was 36,000, yet you will be entitled to be paid the entire amount of 300 units.
What it means, if you were to do the calculations, you would then say, for the asbestos, everything, you would then say 36, the GPS will say 36,303, you multiply by 850, and that is what you will pay.
And
But
that would be much less.
it could be much less, but you pay for the 300,000 that were physically assessed, walked in and assessed, so you still pay the 850.
But the question then is, or before I ask that, is this page 43 part of the report that, of the company?
The report
No.
starts on page 39, Chair.
Yes, but this is part of.
Yes, that's part of the report.
Yes.
Now, what would have been the justification for the HOD to instruct that they should audit even houses that did not have asbestos roofs? Because you can see whether the roofing is asbestos without even going into the house. Are you able to throw light on that?
That's what I indicated, and that is the reason why I refer to this as a heist. There was a number specified from the beginning, that is 300,000. And there is a figure per unit which is 850. And there is a total budget that is there, that is for this project, 255 million. So working it out there, you just work the total amount and work everything and say go down. So you work all this and you make sure that you get the money, all of it. And you can justify that I went to the house and the house does not have an asbestos. And I went to these, only 36 out of 300,000 in the whole of the Free State.
Well, I have a suspicion that your council has quickly calculated what it would have been 850 for 36,000 houses. If anybody has, I would like to know the figure. Oh, he hasn't.
It's
Okay, all
quite
right.
clear.
No, Chairperson, the only thing that I thought the Chairperson needed an answer to is what is a GPS? If you
Yes.
go to page 55, it answers the Chairperson.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, geographical information system.
Yes.
No, Chair.
Global
You go
positioning
down there.
I'm sorry, did I look at the
Under
wrong one?
electronic spatial database, it will say the GPS position of the house can be mapped and has the added advantage that each of the above can later be revised as GPS navigation. So the way they were talking about that information that they will get.
Okay, okay. But, so 36,000 housing units at 850 rand per unit will be far more less than the,
255 million.
it's about 5 million.
No, I'm saying that it will be
Yeah,
far
far less.
than 250 million.
But as far as you know, Mr. Tugwana, because obviously you have spoken to people and you have looked at documents, is there anything that you have come across that says what the justification was, why housing units that did not have asbestos had to be visited?
Every time you engage on this, the only conclusion that one comes to is that it was only motivated by greed and make sure that you get as much money from the whole project. And you could see also by the requests that were coming that these people would not mind if in any project, Chairperson, you need to have a bill of quantities and make sure, especially these, you would know that this is how much the project will cost if we were to do that. But for a person starting anywhere, you start to say, there's 50 million that we put aside for cost for business. And then if you go again at the end, you've got 77 million that in the papers that Mr. Sodi also placed in his case also indicate that the 77 million, the last payment, was it was a profit for them because they did not have any overhead, etc. So meaning the 77 million was to be shared. If you go there, you will see the report indicates that upon discovering that 77 million was paid, they had a meeting, and in that meeting, they then took the 16 million, the 17 million and shared it equally, and the money that was left, because it was said they were over the report in their papers that they submitted to court. He argues that the late Mr. Mpambani indicated that the public protector had actually found out that they were overpaid by 77 million. But then he realized that it was 60 million, and then they had to share the 17 million out of the 77 million. Then he goes to court to demand that half of the 60 million is due to him and that must be paid. So that's why in the papers he demands 30 million of the 77 million because they would have shared the money. So what I'm trying to point out is you have 50 million cost to business, you have 77 million. It works out to 127 million of the 255 million worth of project. That goes is the profit that these people had. And it shows you how bad the whole thing was. There's no project, it's almost half of the total project that will give you a profit.
So the answer is you have not come across anything that provides justification for, there might be no justification maybe for the project in relation to the roofs that have asbestos. Maybe there is justification, but for those that didn't have asbestos roof, you say you've come across nothing that provides any justification.
Nothing.
Yes. I take it, Mr. Mkwena, that attempts are already underway to get all these papers from litigation that he refers to.
Indeed,
and so on.
Indeed.
And Mr. Sodi is still
He's
alive.
alive.
You said you have not met him.
No, I've not, but he's still alive.
Yeah,
Efforts are made, Chair,
Efforts
even though
are
we can't
being made
reveal
to
anything,
get him.
but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chair, from the lawyers, mathematics that are on trust, they say
Sorry?
that from the lawyers, of which are on trust, they are mathematics. They say that for 850 rands and times those 36 units,
36,000, is it?
36,000 units, it's almost 30 million.
30 million.
Yeah, so you can
Okay.
subtract that from the 255.
But you say I must take that figure with a pinch of salt.
Be careful when it comes to lawyers.
I would agree with you. Yes, okay, all right. But that might give us an idea.
It just gives an idea,
Yeah,
Chair.
an idea.
We
Yeah.
might have to rely on other people to do the calculations, but for
Okay.
now, we can live with that figure. Mr. Tukwana, I was just about to move to deal now with what you're calling the housing heist. Now, explain to us before you even deal with the facts relevant to it, why did you refer to it as the housing heist?
This also will demonstrate, Chairperson, how people would steal resources meant for poor people and do that with impunity, and nothing happens. And in this case, you will see that you have key people who are involved, and these people, nothing happened to them. And as usual, as it happens, the people who were dealt with are officials who were taking instructions from their heads. And you would find that the HOD then, the DDG then, and the CFO and the MEC in the department, nothing happened to them. But all other officials who were working in this project were disciplined, and as we speak,
Where what?
there was a disciplinary process, some dedicated officials, and unfortunately, as we speak, most of them are outside the employ of government. And this was only meant, Chairperson, that when the Auditor General comes, you just want to demonstrate that you have done something about this. It usually goes, it happened in the Free State with 23 roads. If you remember, there was a project that cost almost, it was about 6 billion rands in the Free State, and it was 23 roads. And the same way, some officials suffered, but all the people who are up there, nothing happened to them. So these are just, as we say, put them here. People are just stealing. And every time we put the people in front and we say, we want to serve, we are doing all these things for the people. But when it comes out, it is these people that stand up and always, give an impression that you are servants of the people, when in actual fact you are criminals and stealing money from them, and always create this impression that you care. Any person who cares, Chairperson, will not have stolen 255 million just for this. Even the head of the department could have seen that this is wrong and I cannot be part of this. But this thing happened because people were getting something. You come to this, you realize also it's just a heist, the stealing, and nothing else.
Yes. Before we go into more into the housing heist, as you call it, at some stage you talked about going through the report that was provided by the company in regard to the asbestos project. There was reference to one page that may or may not have covered what is necessary, but I thought I would ask the question whether all it says really, for all intents and purposes, is we audited plus minus 300,000, and then out of those 36,000 had asbestos roofs. We did our job, then we're entitled to payment. Was it something along those lines, more or less? or is it difficult to say?
Mr. Chair, what Mr. Tukwane read on page 43, it's in fact the findings.
Yes.
It is the findings,
Of-
you know.
of the report.
Yes, of the report. It's the field findings,
But
unless he wants
is
to
that the report? That's the report of who?
of the entity that was appointed.
Oh, the JV.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm. That's what I am.
Mr. Tukwana,
Well,
Let's
it
go
shouldn't
to
have a
page-
finding because it should just make a report.
yes, let's go to page 39, so that these issues are clarified. And if you can identify that document. you
The
did-
Free State
yeah.
Department of Human Settlement, it's the report, Free State Department of Human Settlement, final audit report.
And who's the author of the report?
The report is prepared by Mr. I.P. Mpambani, Blackhead Consulting JV, and is prepared for head of the department, Free State Department of Human Settlement.
Now, bearing in mind the time period that we have dealt with on page 94, paragraph 2, you don't have to go there.
I'm sorry, before you go there, this is confusing for me. Why is a report that comes from a service provider carrying the logo of the department, giving the impression as if it's a report prepared by the department for somebody else? Is that something you are able to say anything on? You are not able to say anything on?
I don't understand.
Because normally, if you are a service provider, you are supposed to report how you have done the work. Your report should have your own letterheads.
Correct.
And it might be addressed to the client. Earlier on, this gave me the impression as if it was a government.
I thought so, Chair.
Report,
That's why I
yes.
wanted to take him back to this report.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Now, having in mind the duration that we have already spoken about on a number of occasions, what is the date of this report?
13 February 2015.
So that's what you are conveying to the chair, that within a very short space of time, they were able to produce this report and be paid the monies that you have referred to.
Remember, Chairperson, the letter appointing them was dated the 2nd.
So it
of
was
December.
signed on the 2nd December 2014.
But
yes.
it was for the 1st of December. And the final report was submitted or prepared on the 13th of February 2015.
Yes.
So it tells you it's from the 1st of December to the 1st of January will be 1 month, and then the first to that is almost 2 months. So basically, they did a 5-page proposal and a 2-month work.
Well, it's
and
2.5
they got-
months if you
Yes,
if you include the
yeah.
shutdown period.
Yes, and then they got 255 million.
And what you were reading on page 43, you have already read that into the record. It's what the service provider themselves are saying in the report. It's not the department that is recording that. Am I correct?
It is the service provider.
Yes, Chair. So surely it clarifies, Chair, what the service provider themselves say that they've done. And you can then correlate that with what they've been paid, and in line with what Mr. Tukwane has testified about throughout the better part of the day.
Yes, I see that on that page 43, there is a reference to phase 2 of the works, and I know that Mr. Tukwana did before lunch make a reference to phase 2.
And it says options to cater.
Yes, it says
Yes.
options.
Yes.
It says options to cater for repairs will be developed in detail on phase 2 of the works. However, recommendations highlighting the advantages and drawbacks of each option is indicated as follows, and then it goes on. Okay.
This comes to what the chairperson was asking, that it explains it also that it was just for auditing and all that. and then there was going to be that other process of removing them and doing that, and they had options. And what this means, the stealing was going to continue. I suppose had the death of Mr. Mbambane did not happen, and you could see if you check the amount of money that were now earmarked to be used for the roofing and everything, and the options that are there, we're talking here a lot of money. You're talking about 3.6 billion, and this was pointed there. For that, the first option would have been 3.8 billion, and the second option 3.7 billion, and that was going to be the
Where are you reading those figures from?
page 84, Chairperson.
Oh, okay.
Of that report.
Thank you.
So I'm just saying, this was something that was going to continue. So it was that, and once we have dealt with the identification of such houses, the focus now of the number there was going to be something. And remember, Chairperson, that they said they had 3 in their report. If you go to 43, you said, in the report, I think it's 43.
Yeah, 43.
They said the 36 units, 36,000 units, and then it was now going out and the rate, demolishing existing building and dispose rubble, the amount there and everything. And the total project, as they say, with the options that are there, is 3.7 and then 3.8 billion. That if the project were to continue, this is the amount of money that was going to be spent to remove these asbestos roofs and replace them with either the IBR sheet roof or something else that, or the tile roof. So what it explains is that they did not do that work because it needed to be approved first and then given a go-ahead.
To the extent that there may have been a need for this type of project in respect of housing units that had asbestos roofs, you have come across nothing that justifies why it shouldn't have been put through a competitive tender process. Is that right?
Yeah, they have come. There's nothing.
There's nothing.
There's nothing.
Okay.
Does that clarify, Chair, the initial
Yes.
inquiries? Yes.
Yes.
Can we now move on to, you have now explained to the Chair as to why you refer to it as the housing heist. Can you preface, this session of your testimony by giving us a brief synopsis of relevant material facts, giving rise to what really transpired in this housing heist?
In 2010, Chairperson, the Minister of Housing at the time was Mr. Tokyo Swal. And there was a decision taken that any province that was not moving in terms of building houses, because people were tired, in fact, even in Parliament, the Parliament was tired of departments that were not spending their allocated amount of money, and then every time rollovers and rollovers. So then the department under the Tokyo Squad decided that if they find that a province is not delivering accordingly, they will then take whatever that is allocated, what they feel should be taken, and give what they have taken from this province, give to the province that is moving, so that houses are built, instead of waiting for this and nothing happens. So during that time, there was a notice to the effect that money is from the Free State, because at the time this, I think it was almost in December, the Free State spending was very low in terms of houses. And it could be explained, Chairperson, it was at the time when, after the elections, 2009, and you're getting into the new era. And in this case, you find a new administration, a new premier, and there were contracts that were there. And you would think that government operating as government, it was not any other government, it was still the ANC government. And the person who was an MEC at the time of housing was also an MEC member, an ANC member. So the common sense is you take the work that is there, you continue with the work. But it was not to be. What happened is those who had contracts at the time, there was a need to renegotiate these contracts. And some of these people, it took a long time for this process to happen. And it actually created this backlog for the department because they could not go ahead and build. Remember, the financial year would end in April, and there will be these allocations coming in. But if by December, you still have not done the work that you needed to do in terms of identifying the service providers and starting the work, then it created a problem. So this is why this backlog existed. If the income in the administration that came in 2009 had continued with existing projects, existing companies that were awarded contracts at the time, so that by the time your financial year comes, you've got money and you can work. But this created that problem. And in December, I think a few days before.
I'm so sorry, just to understand the part soon after the new administration came in 2009. So you say contractors who had already been awarded contracts before the elections, who were carrying on with the work, they were effectively told, no, now this is a new administration, we'll have to renegotiate. Is that what you're saying?
This is what I'm saying, Chairperson.
Yes, and what was being renegotiated now was the new prices or what? I mean, there was a contract, there were contracts in place that had been signed by the same government.
Chairperson, what I want to point out is, as government and how you work, you develop all these systems. And by the time you go to the next, you already know how much is going to be allocated for you before the financial year begins. And with that knowledge, armed with that knowledge, you prepare the ground. And in this case, you advertise, you do that. You don't advertise in April after you have received money. So you'll do that in advance so that by the time the financial year begins, already you have people. There are many business people who were given these contracts, and some were told to give back these contracts, etc., because people wanted, also some of these business people wanted to be in the good books of the new administration. Some of them accepted and did that in hoping that they would be favored at the time when these allocations were given. But it was not to be. It was clear, this is something that you would witness, that people normally, as it happens in many, I don't know in other provinces, but in our province, that is what is a problem that we're sitting with. This administration comes, you actually want your own, you have your own style, you do things differently, you disregard some of the things that happened in the past, and then you start something new. And this is what actually has created problems in terms of having a seamless transition in terms of government, taking into consideration in the Free State, it has been the ANC in government, and it has been ANC members in these portfolios. So it will be common sense that if that happens and the new MEC comes, There's nothing that you need to take, and then the financial year that comes, you will then introduce whatever you introduce. So you don't disturb the smooth running of of government. But in this case, it was like that and continue afresh.
Now, faced with the threat of the money having been, or threat that the money might be taken, back to the national government, what then happened?
The MEC, Mr. Msebenziswane at the time, came to a meeting of the executive.
Was he MEC for housing
It was
in
MEC
2009?
for housing, and, it was still.
In the
one
new
department.
administration
Yes, sir.
at that time, yeah.
Yes. And I was MEC for economic development and tourism at the time, and environmental affairs. So I sat in the meeting where this happened. In that meeting, it was a few days before the 16th of December in 2010. And with this threat in government that money would be taken away from the Free State, because we had spent almost less than 10% at the time, as I wanted, April, it's May, June, July, you're in December, and you only left with January, February, March, and then, so roll over.
The end of the financial year,
Yes.
the end of March, yeah.
Yes. And now you're going to have a problem. And then for you to deal with that, the MEC got into the meeting and indicated, related the whole story.
In December 2010.
In December 2010.
Okay.
And said that we should not be worried because they have a plan. And he's not going to take any holiday. He was going to work throughout. And that one picked that up immediately. And the question that one asked was, considering that the 16th of December around the corner could be 2 days or so of that meeting, what is it that you are going to do when contractors would have been closed by that time? Then he said, no, we're going to work throughout the holidays and to make sure that no money goes. So this is the creation of this fiasco that we're sitting with. And we went with that understanding, and you could not understand how that was going to be possible. But when we came back...
Was he saying this at a meeting of the Executive Council of the province?
Correct.
On the 15th of December 2010?
No, it was in December. I can't remember.
You can't remember
but it was
the
in
date.
December.
Okay.
And the fact, what I remember is, the question was, considering that we are a few days before the 16th of December, what is it that we are going to do when contractors are closing on the 16th of December? And all that he said was that he will not personally, he will be overseeing this process. He would not go on holiday, and he will work on this. When we came back, when we reopened, the report that he gave was, we have managed to move, I think at the time he was saying we have managed to move to almost 66% or so of the spending of the budget. And some of our colleagues were impressed, but there were others who were not impressed in terms of what could have happened. The question was then, is this 66% or so, are you talking about money actually spent in building houses? And the answer was yes, we have built houses, we have sorted the matter out. But it came later, as we will see, that it was money paid to implementing to service providers, etc., without them doing any job. And it cost the province a lot of money, and many of the people who were supposed to get those houses did not get those houses. And you will see later, even when the current head of the department and deposing his statement to his affidavit in the court application to declare, to nullify these contracts, and referring to it as a corrupt scheme engineered in the department. That is how he used the terms that he used there. I might not be quoting him verbatim, but it is in that. And also agreeing and, confirming that almost more than 500 million rand was lost in this, and then the houses and the number of units of houses that were not built. So in essence, you could see that some people were given some money, and some in that process, some were involved in the car accident and died, and nothing was done in terms of getting the money back. And there were some other people who would just say, we did what we needed to do, and then there will be service providers who would just tout the money, that there's nothing.
Yes.
So the department, this is the long and short of what this is, but we can go point by point, Chairperson.
Yes, before referring you to specific annexures or documents that you may have alluded to, may we preface that with you reading paragraph 67 into the record on page 21.
Through that commitment by Mr. Zwane, service providers, some of which had no expertise in building of houses, let alone registered with the NHRBC, were paid in advance millions without compliance with any public procurement prescripts. There is a court case about this matter that has since been withdrawn. For ease of reference, I annex here to marked 2DM15, a copy of the court order indicating that the matter has been withdrawn by the applicant.
Yes, may we proceed to also read paragraph 68?
Fortunately, my legal team has been able to obtain the application to review and set aside the corrupt scheme conceived by Mr. Zwane and undoubtedly at the behest of Mr. Magashule. In the said application, the HOD of the Human Settlement in the Free State, that is the current HOD, Mr. Mogesi, deposed to a very lengthy affidavit, and I'm advised I should read the same into the record as annexure to DM16.
May I then refer you to page 125? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Is this the notice of removal that you alluded to in the previous paragraph that you have read into the record?
It's true. That is.
And what is the date of that removal?
The date is dated on the 5th day of March 2019.
Are you aware if this application was ever pursued after this removal?
I have not seen anything that is towards that.
Yes. Now, may I refer you to page 128? Is this the affidavit that you have referred to as being deposed to by Mr. Mukesi, wherein they sought to set aside this corrupt scheme, as per your words?
Correct, sir.
Yes. I am not going to permit you to read, as you have requested, the entire affidavit, but what we will attempt to do in order to place some of the facts relevant to your testimony before on record is to direct you to some of the portions of the affidavit. If I may refer you to page 130.
Just repeat that page, please.
Page 130, 130, Chair.
130.
Yes.
Thank you.
You would see that there is a subheading dedicated to deal with the nature of this application. If you can read those paragraphs into the record up until paragraph 11, at least they'll give us a sense as to what you are referring to.
The nature of this application. 7. This application arises from a set of agreements concluded in late 2010 and early 2011 between the department and a number of building contractors and suppliers of building material to whom I refer generally as the contractors and the suppliers, and to payments made by the department to the suppliers. The agreement are listed in the schedule attached as NM1 to this application and Annexure 2 to the notice of motion. The agreements relate to the construction of low-cost housing in the Free State Province. The department received a large conditional funding allocation from the National Treasury to build low-cost housing. The agreements formed part of a fraudulent scheme which was conceived by the department to disperse very substantial sums of money, mainly to the suppliers, in order to avoid the funds becoming a so-called unspent conditional allocation and therefore reverting to the National Revenue Fund.
So that's for this accord to what you have told the chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, all right, you may proceed.
The department, through the MEC, seeks orders declaring the agreements and the decisions to make payments to the suppliers to be unlawful and accordingly void ab initio. In addition, or in the alternative, it seeks the review and setting aside in accordance with the requirements of legality or in terms of the provisions of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act number 3 of 2000, PAJA, or both of the department's decision to conclude the agreements and make the payments. In consequence, it seeks the review and setting aside of the agreement themselves. There are two major grounds on which the department seeks this relief. The first is that the agreements were concluded and the payments were made in breach of procurement law. The second is that the agreement and payments form part of a fraudulent scheme and are tainted by fraud. The department has instituted several action proceedings in this court against contractors and suppliers who received payments from the department or who benefited from such payments. In the actions, the department seeks inter alia to recover what it paid over or an appropriate portion of what it paid over. The actions are listed in the schedule attached as NM2 to this application and Annexure 4 to the notice of motion.
Yes. Now, if I may refer you to page 133 in order for us to get a sense as to how many respondents were pursued in this application that was withdrawn. If you may read paragraph 16 into the records.
There are 106 respondents. They are the building contractors and suppliers of building materials, to which I have already referred. I confirm that this application and the amendments made are confined to the respondents as cited herein and as identified in NM1 and NM2 respectively.
Yes, and you referred earlier on to the heading, you coined it to be the housing heist. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Now, may I refer you to page 134 to see whether you find comfort in what is stated from paragraph 22 to 22 to 23.5. If you can read same into the record, please.
The department's scheme. I've said that this application relates to a set of agreements which the department concluded in late 2010 and early 2011 with contractors and suppliers. I've also said that the agreements form part of a fraudulent scheme conceived by the department to pay out funds from its conditional funding allocation in order to avoid the funds becoming an unspent conditional allocation and reverting to the National Revenue Fund. It is convenient to describe the department schemes upfront. Its major features were: 1, the department concluded some 125 written building contracts with contractors. Cumulatively, in terms of these contracts, contractors were appointed to construct approximately 14,769 low-cost houses in 6 district municipalities and towns across the Free State. The total value of the building contract was varied and was based on an average of 72,417 rands per unit or per house. The building contracts provided that the contractors were obliged to supply the necessary materials for their construction work, The value of the building contract thus included the cost of materials. The department also concluded some 120 written tripartite supply agreements with contractors and building.
112.
112.
Yes.
112.
Yes. Oh, I might have misunderstood. I thought you said 120.
No,
112.
Oh, okay, all right. Yes.
The department also concluded some 112 written tripartite supply agreements with contractors and building material suppliers. A material term of these supply agreements was that the department will pay suppliers for building materials which the suppliers supply to contractors. Suppliers' claims for payment were required, or suppliers' claims for payment were required to be supported by 1, an invoice in respect of material supplied by the supplier to the contractor, and 2, a certificate from the contractor confirming receipt of the materials invoiced. The department also agreed to the cession by the contractors to the suppliers of claims which the contractors purported to have against the department. The cessions were documented in written material supply cession agreements signed by the contractors, suppliers, and the department. The cession agreements contained instructions from the contractors to the department to pay the ceded claims to the suppliers. The department made payments to the suppliers. The total value of the payments made to the 21 suppliers over the period 2009 to 2011 exceeds 500 million rands. The payments were made from the conditional allocation which the department received from the National Revenue Fund via the National Department. There was no lawful cause for the payment.
Yes, if I may stop you there. So the amount reflected on paragraph 23.4 accords with what you have also referred to when you testified earlier to the chairperson.
Correct, Chair.
And this is the amount which could have been expanded or being paid within that short space of time when you said that it was already in December, 2 days before the 16th, and up until the time when you came back.
Correct, Chair.
Now, may I refer you to page 136? And then we can skip all these other paragraphs and concentrate on paragraph 24. Take us through paragraph 24.
Before that, Mr. Mkwena, assuming that this 500 million rand that is referred to in regard to this project, you call it heist, was paid for no value for money, effectively. Maybe even not assuming that there was just corruption here. If you add the amount that was mentioned in regard to the asbestos project, you add this 500 million to that one, you don't reach $1 billion as yet, or do you? On that other one, the amount, the project was about 255 million.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, there was a figure that we mentioned, and I was saying that already you are looking at 700 and something million, isn't it?
Yes.
Remember, you added
Yes.
the 4,000, or was like getting confused. There was a time when I was talking about 700 and something million, but of course the total amount for the value of the project was 255. Maybe I got confused and mentioned 700 and something. So there's no 700 and something million.
Setukwana, do you want to answer?
Maybe the food
I
has
think
done
I'll
something.
allow counsel for Mr. Tukwana. I think.
No, Chair, let me assist. Let me
Yeah,
assist.
yes,
700,000 that the chair was making reference to
yeah.
has to do with onerous requests that were directed at the Premier's office,
Yes,
and the chairperson was saying it's 470 that has to be paid, 30,000 to an SRC president, that is
Yes.
500,000. There is 250
Oh, yes.
that is paid to a travel agent,
yes.
blah, blah, blah.
No,
So
no, it was not
those-
millions.
Yes, those, yeah.
Those are separate.
Those are separate
Yes,
from
no.
this. From
Now
this.
I understand. So, but if we add this 500 million to that 255 million, one is looking at over 700 million in terms of the two projects.
Correct.
Okay.
I have stayed deliberately from the computation of the funds with the caution that I gave earlier on.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Tukwana,
We
I was
make one
referring you
proceed.
to page 13. Is it 134? 136, with particular reference to paragraph 24. Take us through that.
Paragraph 24, the reason the department implemented the scheme was this. In late October, and November 2010, the department was severely criticized by the National Department because it had very significantly underspent from its conditional grant allocation. Halfway through the financial year, it had spent only 10% of what it was meant to have spent. The National Department and the National Treasury threatened that the unspent allocation would revert to the National Revenue Fund to be reallocated to provinces with better spending records. In the face of that threat, the department proceeded to implement the scheme, disbursing funds to the tune of more than 500 million from its conditional allocation over the 2009 to 2011 with no lawful cause for the payment made.
Yes. Let's then skip the rest and go to page 138. What appears to be relevant to sketch the relevant, facts is paragraph 27 and 28.
I submit that the department scheme was a fraud on the national government, specifically on the fiscus. It was also a fraud on the public, on all who expect state funds to be spent properly, including on improving the standard of living of the poor, on those in the Free State and in other provinces with an expectation of receiving state-funded housing, and all taxpayers. I have described above the fraudulent aspects of the department scheme. It is important to point out that the contracts were also unlawful because the department did not follow any lawful procurement process before concluding them. This is in itself a ground on which the contracts should be declared void.
Yes, and so in order for us to appreciate whether there was any value for this money that were paid, I know that you have touched to that, but it may be also prudent for us to go to page 147 and take us through from paragraph 64 to 66. Page 147, Chief.
Page 147.
Yes,
From 64.
from 64 to 66.
At the time, however, the memorandum contemplates advance payments to material suppliers, with advance payments to be regulated via specific agreement. For an example, one of the features apparently enforcing the department's turnaround strategy is that the department will, where necessary, enter into agreement with material suppliers and provide them with an advance payment. That is paragraph 1, 5th bullet point. Paragraph 3.6 of the memorandum states that the department may provide an advance payment to the material supply, and in such event, a separate agreement shall be entered into by the department and the service provider. The department's decisions were in clear breach of the advice given to it by the National Department via chain and the technical MINMEC meetings. The department had been told that its expenditure recovery plan was not acceptable and that it should not implement it. It had also been told that paying suppliers without the suppliers having supplied materials was unlawful. As I set out in more detail below, the department proceeded to make payments to suppliers without the suppliers having supplied material. That is, it made payments in advance. No written agreements were concluded governing those payments. The department did not follow any proper procurement process to identify the suppliers to which it made payments. The total value of the payments made is nearly 1 billion.
So this is very serious, Mr. Tukwana.
Very, very.
And up until now, you don't know the reason why this application was not proceeded with.
I don't know the reasons, but I can only speculate, Chair. As I said earlier, once you make corruption to be normal in society, things like this happen. And in this case, I can, sitting here, Chairperson, having worked in government, and especially in the Free State, there is no official, and I repeat, there is no official that will be this brave to disregard the national department's directive, even when even the Treasury, when it warns you don't do that. You know the consequences that will follow. But this could only, the bravery that these people got for them to be doing that is because of the backing that they have. And that backing would be coming from the Premier as well as the MEC. And I'm saying this, Chairperson, because the contracts were signed in December and in January. It is the period that the MEC indicated that he was going to be there overseeing the process. So what it means is he knew exactly what was happening, and he could not have done that without consulting, and I'm talking from experience. He would not do that without consulting the Premier.
Yes.
So in this case, the unfortunate thing that happened was when people realized that these things were so serious, the poor officials were, especially at the junior, at some levels, they suffered because of this. They were pushed under the bus. And when you expect leaders to take responsibility, like the MEC who said, we are going to make a plan, you would expect the MEC will be brave enough to say, this is what I advise these people to do, and take the blame instead of all the time having officials taking the blame. So this, as I stated, demonstrate clearly, Chairperson, that there is always disregard of this. But what was happening here, why it was taken, what is being said, say, by Ndademukwe, the question that I'm asked is that the only reason that I can deduce from this is that you need to demonstrate, Chairperson, to the Auditor General that we suspended people, we are going to court to get this nullified, and then we will get our money back. And we are talking about something that happened way back in 2010, and this is 2019, and nothing has happened yet. So it demonstrates that this was very urgent, because if you stay longer, many of these people we're talking about who are service providers would not be having any assets that you can, as a department.
Well, let's just make sure we get everything in, we understand it in proper context. Sometime during the first half of December 2010, a meeting of the Executive Council of the provincial government takes place, which you attended.
Yes, Chairperson.
And that meeting is held against the backdrop that the National Department of Human Settlements had, or maybe let me rephrase that. That meeting took place against the backdrop that there was an understanding, to say the least. Let's leave out threats and so on. There was an understanding on the part of the MEC for human settlements in the province that if money that had been allocated to his department for housing had not been used, that money had not been used by the end of the financial year, that money would be taken away from the province. Is that right?
That is correct, Chair.
And he didn't want that to happen.
Not at all, Chairperson.
And he then said at the meeting of the Executive Council, which you attended, that he would not go on holiday during that December holiday, and they would make a plan.
Correct, Chair.
And the plan being to make sure that the money that had been allocated for housing in the province would be used, all of it would be used if possible.
Correct.
So that there would be no money taken away from the province.
The intention was to avoid money being taken
Yeah,
away.
the intention
Yes.
was to avoid that.
Yes.
And some of you at the meeting were concerned how he would do that given the short time left before the end of the financial year and the December break that was supposed to happen.
There was no logic, Chairperson, in the sense that the April to December, you have only spent 10%.
Yeah, and that's
you left with February, March, and then your financial year ends.
yes.
And the question was, what is it that you will do in that space of time, a short space of time?
So as at the time of that meeting, your understanding is that the Department of Human Settlement in the province had only spent 10% of its budget for housing.
Correct, Chair.
Yes. And the MEC at the time, who was Mr. Zwane, said he would not go away for the holiday. They would make a plan to avoid money being taken away.
He indicated that he himself and the officials would not go on holiday.
Would not go away.
They will work around the clock.
Yes. And did you also say when you came back, which I assume would be after in the new year, he made a report to the Executive Council as to what they had been able to do?
We came back late January or early February.
Yes.
When the legislature opened and the executive started functioning. And the report given was that we have moved, we're sitting at 66% of the spend that we should have made, So the question was from December to January, what is it that did you build the houses? And the answer was yes. We were not told that it was this scheme.
Okay, so there was a meeting of the Executive Council of the province later in January.
In 2011.
At which Mr. Zwane made a report.
Gave a report to this
And the
effect.
report was in part to the effect that as at that time, he was able to say his department had spent about 66% of the money that had been allocated for housing during that financial year.
Correct, and was praised for working hard.
He was praised for working hard. But you say you were not told as to what exactly he and his department had done within this short period to achieve such a high percentage of expenditure.
No, it did not
You were
give the
not
details.
told.
No, we were not told.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Let's now proceed to also refer to some of the relevant facts which corroborates what we have already testified on before the chair. Turn to page 149, Mr. Tukwana. And if you can read into the record, paragraph 72 to 74.
Before you do that, I just want to, you are reading from an affidavit, from the affidavit of Mr. Timotse Mukhetsi, which was apparently deposed to on the 21st December 2016, that appears at page 207. And he was at the time, at least I don't know now, he was at the time the head of the same department, is that right?
Mr. Mukhesi.
Sorry?
Are you talking about Mr. Mukhesi?
Yes. This affidavit from which you are reading,
Yes.
yeah, was the head of the same department in 2016.
The head of the department, if I'm not mistaken, was Ndate Gift Mukwena. I think at the time there were two departments. Yeah. You had the Department of Housing under one MEC, was housing and.
Well, he does
Copter.
say in the paragraph, in paragraph 1, Mr. Tukwana,
Page 129, Mr. Chair.
yeah, 129, he does say he is the head of the Free State Department of Human Settlements, and he is saying that as at the 21st of December 2016. So he must have been head of the department at the time, in December 2016.
At the time he prepares this.
At the
Yes.
time he prepared
Yes,
this,
yes,
yes. So
I thought
so
the
my
question was
question was whether this person whose affidavit you are reading from was the head of the same department, but in 2016, December, which I think
No,
is correct.
in 2010 he was not the head of the
No.
department.
I'm saying he was the head of department in December 2016,
Yes.
but this department of which he was the head in 2016 is the same department we are talking about in 2010.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Page 149, from paragraph 72 to 74, if you can read that.
Can I ask if you allow just to clarify this on that is page paragraph 70.
Yes, yes.
That will clarify the concern. You remember I said it was reported as 66%, but if you check here, the department responded by issuing its own. It was in response to 69. On the 18th January 2011, the National Department issued a media statement regarding the shifting of funding from underperforming provinces, the Free State and KwaZulu-Natal, to other provinces.
Yes.
And then the department responded by issuing its own media statement on the 20th January, purporting to set the record straight. It stated, among other things, that the department would spend its entire conditional allocation by the end of the financial year. It stated the following: as of to date, 20 January 2011, the department has spent a total of 78% of the conditional grant funding. By the end of January, expenditure should be around 85%.
Yes.
Yeah, I see that in paragraph 67 at page 148. The deponent to the affidavit says on 12 January 2011, the National Department advised the department, that must be the Provincial Department of Human Settlements, that 263 million of its rand of its conditional allocation was to be stopped and would be reallocated to other provinces. That's what they didn't want to happen. That's what Mrs. Zwane didn't want to happen.
Yes.
So this is what they said, and then the media statements followed.
Correct.
Okay.
149.
By the time these statements were issued, the department had already transferred several hundred millions of rands from its conditional allocation to suppliers. It continued to make unlawful transfers in January, February, and March 2011. The transfers were made without the suppliers having supplied material, without written agreements in respect of or regulating the transfers, and without any proper procurement process having been followed. The department made the transfer for the purpose of avoiding having its conditional allocation stopped and transferred to better performing provinces. It made the transfers so that it looked as if the conditional allocation had been spent. I submit that this was a fraud on the National Treasury and on the national government more broadly, as well as on the taxpayers and the public generally. I repeat that the unlawful transfers amount to more or less 631 million rands in total.
Just
this-
stop there. Just the context again. This is the head of department. This is the head of the same department, but later,
Later,
in 2016,
in 2016.
who is making an application to court.
Yes.
So all of these things that he says here must have been things that he has checked in the department to establish exactly when were payments made and to whom and so on.
Correct, Chair, because he indicated that as factual issues.
Yes.
And that was under oath.
Yes.
Maybe to jump ahead of myself as well, if you turn to page 208, simply to piggyback from the chairperson's question and maybe to also place context as to where would that information also be derived from. Are you able to identify this document on page 208?
This in the High Court of South Africa, Free State Division, Bloemfontein, and in the matter between the member of the Executive Council of the Department of Cooperative Governance, Human Settlement and Traditional Affairs, Free State as an applicant, and Scenic Route Trading 802cc, and the 105 further respondent listed in Annex 1 to the notice of motion.
And who's
as
the deponent?
As Herbert Lubita.
Now let's see on page 209 as to who is he. If you can read paragraph 1.
Paragraph 1, Mr. Herbert Lubita states the following. I'm employed by the Special Investigating Unit, SIU, in short, as a project manager stationed at the Special Investigating Unit Office, second floor, Telcom Building, Zaston Street, Bloemfontein.
Yes. Do I take it that as at that time, the SIU was also involved in order to deal with the affairs that you have testified about in this?
According to this, yes.
Yes, all right. Now, let's go back to put more facts relevant to what you have already alluded to. If you may turn to page 176 and take us through paragraph 132 and paragraph 133, Mr. Tukwana.
The consequences. The department paid approximately 631 million without having received anything in exchange. There was no evidence when the department made its payments that it had received value for the payments made, in that houses had been built or part built to a satisfactory standard. The department has made extensive efforts to try to ascertain to what extent houses were in fact constructed and materials were in fact delivered, as contemplated in the construction agreements. In other words, the department has tried to ascertain to what extent material suppliers dealt with the money paid to them by the department honestly and responsibly, by using it to supply materials to contractors for the purpose of constructing the houses contemplated in the construction agreements, and for the purpose for which the money was originally allocated and transferred by national government to the department. This has been an exceedingly difficult point to get clarity on. In this regard, I have referred above to clauses of the construction contract which oblige the contractors to keep information relating to the building project up to date, to allow the department access to such information, and to provide the department with monthly written progress report on the status of the project, the expenditure to date, and any other information reasonably required by the department. This was not done by any of the contractors. The contractors' paperwork was either totally inadequate or simply did not exist, nor have the material suppliers ever provided proper reports to the department.
If I may stop you there. So clearly from the deponent of this affidavit, there was no value at all for an amount of 63.1 million
Correct.
to be paid at all.
Correct.
Yes. If you may turn lastly to page 203. and take us through the contents of paragraph 222. You will locate it at the bottom of the page.
I draw attention to the following consideration in addition to those which I have already mentioned. 1, the entire scheme was fraudulent and tainted by the fraud. The contractors and suppliers must have known that it was unlawful for the scheme to be constructed in this manner and for payments to be made in this manner. They must have known that this was fundamentally inconsistent with the manner in which the state ordinarily and lawfully does business. As I've pointed out, some of the invoices submitted by contractors and suppliers were themselves fraudulent. The merits of the review are, I respectfully submit, very strong. The sums paid over by the department under the unlawful scheme and now sought to be recovered by the department are very substantial. It is in the public interest that substantial amounts of public money which have been unlawfully spent should be recovered. This is particularly so where the money has been diverted from the intended purpose of delivering houses to members of poor communities who do not have access to adequate housing in fulfillment of their constitutional rights. It is in the public interest that those who have benefited from fraud and otherwise unlawful activity should not be able to retain the benefits of the fraud and illegality.
Yes, and 223, just.
Allowing the consequences of the scheme to stand is, I submit, inconsistent with the duty of the state to fight corruption and maladministration, particularly in relation to public money.
Yes. May I now refer you back to a statement with particular reference to page 22.
Before you go back there, this is a very detailed affidavit that was deposed to in December 2016. So it's 2.5 years later, because you live in the Free State, you might know if you have heard that anybody has been arrested and prosecuted in regard to any of these matters covered in this very detailed affidavit.
No, sir. No, Chair. Nobody.
Were there any, or you said that there may have been, or there were junior officials who were disciplined?
Government is a hierarchical animal, in the sense that even when you prepare a memo, just to demonstrate, if a memo comes from a deputy director, it will go to a director, it goes to the chief director if they have, and goes to the deputy director general if the department has, it goes to the head of the department, and it goes to the MEC. In the time that I was there, I saw many delays that were made deliberately. A report would lie prepared by the deputy director, who may not necessarily be there, say would submit to the director who is on course. It will wait there even if it waits for a week. And then when he comes, and in some instances, Chair, some of the people will not read this because they realize that they are not the final decision makers.
Yeah.
So all that they do, they just say,
on.
noted and sign.
Yeah.
Others without having read this. And in some instances, you'll find that even some of the HODs will not have read the matter. When it comes to you, if you are a person who reads, you would find some mistakes and you say, take this matter back. And you would be surprised that even the HOD in some instances did not realize the mistake. So in an event that you just sign, you'd find MECs will sign without having read the whole thing. In some instances, they just go, what the first page is, and what the recommendations are, and then you sign and you leave it there. So I'm just saying, this scheme would not have happened if there was no memo that came from whoever, say at the junior level, director up. In this case, the CFO will be included because there is money involved. The chief director will be included, the DDG will be included, and the HOD will be included. Finally, the MEC would have signed this, and then that would then be implemented. Without that, it does not happen. So I don't see how this could have happened. But in the situation, the MEC, nothing happened to him. The HOD, nothing. The DDG, nothing. The chief director was then, and the directors and others. And the CFO, nothing. So you've got these other people at the senior level, nothing is done to them. And only these few people who are not decision makers, even if you are a chief director in that environment, you would not make a decision without that decision going up to the DDG and to the head HOD who would give, and the MEC, it comes back. So it is how these things have been done. Maybe when I left, things changed, but when I was still there, this was the process that will be followed. So I'm just stating the fact that I strongly believe that if there are people who needed to be dealt with, it would have been the DDG, the HOD, the CFO, and the MEC.
Yes, yes. And then I would have thought that when the MEC, Mr. Zwane, reported at an executive council meeting late in January that within effectively a period of about maybe 7 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, which included a certain number of weeks that were shut down weeks for maybe many businesses. When he reported that he had been able to raise the expenditure of the department from 10% early in December to 66% or thereabout late in January, I would have thought that the Premier would have been interested in knowing, how did you do that? Exactly what did you do? Please tell me more. How did you achieve that? You take 8 months to spend only 10% of the allocation. You take 6-7 weeks, you are able to add 40-something% of expenditure that you have used. You don't remember in that meeting the Premier asking that type of question?
No. Not that I don't remember, but he did not.
He did not?
No, he did not. The question that were asked were coming from other members who were surprised, how did you do it?
Yes.
But he said it was, they worked hard throughout the...
he didn't give an answer as to exactly what they did.
Report. There was no written reports that would come to the executive as expected.
Yes.
So it was just a verbal report, just to note that we have managed to prevent money taken out of the province, and we made sure that money stays in the province, and we have reported to the national to the fact that this is the case.
Yeah, well, we will hear from the Premier at some stage, I'm sure, because I think if you are the Premier and your MEC tells you this, that should, some alarm bells should ring to say, no, I really want to know, how did you achieve that? What actually did you do to satisfy yourself that somebody in your council hasn't done anything wrong? You know? But That's fine. Okay.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Well, those were also addressed, but I'm not going to take them to Kwane there, just for noting from page 142,
Yes.
to 143. Those could just be some of the questions that, this application grappled with, but we don't have to really read them, Chair.
Yes. Can I find out, Mr. Tukwana, whether you know whether the respondents in this matter, in this application brought by the head of department in the High Court for the cancellation of these contracts and recovery of the money, whether they filed any papers in court to oppose or they just didn't oppose? Is that something you know, or is that something you don't know?
I don't know, Chair.
Okay, all right.
We can verify at the later stage, Chair.
Page
Now-
135.
No, I was just for noting, Chair, that,
Oh.
some of the questions that you have posed
Oh,
might
yes,
be,
okay.
dealt with on those pages 142 and to
Okay.
143.
Okay.
Yes. We'll also make a note for them in our submissions. If you go to page 22, Mr. Tukwana, you make concluding statements, and those are critical and crucial. If you can read paragraph 72 to 73.
I'm stating here that the government of the Free State must explain why it withdrew the application.
Page 22,
Page
paragraph
22,
70.
or 70.
Yes.
Mr. Zwane must explain to the Commission the extent of his work during December 2010 holidays and how the service providers were identified and why they were paid in advance without any procurement procedures followed. It must be noted that in the application, the SIU deposed to a confirmatory affidavit, and yet the SIU has not, in terms of its powers, moved swiftly to recover the public monies appropriated unlawfully by those involved. For ease of reference, I annexed the SIU confirmatory affidavit as 2MD 17.
And that is the one that you have already touched on.
Yes.
Yes.
To my knowledge and recollection, through this housing heist, no houses were either renovated or built to this day. Mr. Zwane needs to explain, as the former executive authority of the department, his role in this housing heist. Where are the houses renovated or built? What happened to millions of taxpayers' money? The government of the Free State must explain why it withdrew the application in issue. The reason that I'm talking about Mr. Zwane, Chairperson, is that immediate after once you dissolve the executive, after the election, when the premier is elected and has taken an oath, all the executive powers of the province fall within his ambit. And then he once he delegates this either to the HODs, to MECs, etc., certain powers. And in this case, as an executive authority, you've got an authority in terms of the law to deal with matters that pertain to your department. And that is why, in terms of the processes, that whilst people will say, I don't sign, it will be, once there is a recommendation, it goes up until the MEC. The MEC may not be involved in the adjudication of tenders, etc. But once the appointment is to be made, there will be this, it will come that this is what the relevant committees, etc., that have, and you would have the knowledge. It might come to your attention, for you, for attention, so that you know what has happened. It may come also for you to make, to approve whatever they should have dealt with, from where they're supposed to do. So it is not correct that an MEC would claim that he did not know or that it did not happen. You know exactly what happens in your department. Otherwise, it will be a person who ignores his responsibility. That is why I emphasize that Mr. Zwane has an explanation to do, and it will be in the best interest of this commission considering that you're talking about so many people, almost 14,000 units that would have covered so many families and so much money that we cannot get it this year when it happened in 2010.
But also, in regard to this project, if you can call it a project, he had a special interest in it if your evidence is true, because he went to the extent of not going on holiday
Yes.
in order to put together a plan.
Correct.
From what you say he said at the meeting,
Correct.
and he reported back.
He reported back.
It would be difficult to think that he stayed and worked and didn't take a holiday, but he didn't know what the plan was and how the plan was implemented.
It will be, if you were to say that, it will be disingenuous of him.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
I am just about to move to a new topic, Mr. Tukwana. The one that you refer to it as the... Yes, Chair.
Mr. When I say we are at something like 2 minutes to 4, let's talk about what's going to happen. I am able to sit beyond 4, but let's just check and make sure that we are able to. From your side, you
Yes,
are,
Chair.
you are
We
ready.
find ourselves in that quagmire whereby there might be other issues of the commission tomorrow, so we are willing to
Yes.
proceed and deal with this.
Yes. Are you also okay?
We are in agreement, Chair.
You're in agreement,
Thank you.
okay. Mr. Dugwana, you are fine if we continue beyond 4?
Perhaps
I
a
don't
tea
have a problem.
break, Chair.
Sorry? Maybe a tea break would be appropriate. But before we take the tea break, I just want to have an idea that we are coming back after the tea break to continue or not. Mr. Dugwana, you are okay?
I'm okay, sir.
Yes. What's your estimate of how much time we need?
Chair, the remaining topics are fairly straightforward and they're not as demanding as the ones that you've dealt with.
Yes.
Now, my sense is that we might need another hour, only
So-
if we can make sure that, we are dealing here with a witness that is a politician, so if he sees a microphone, it might be difficult also to deal with him, Mr. Chair. So from
Yes.
time to time, I'm reminded as to how to lead such a witness.
Well, I've had quite a number of occasions when I've also thought maybe I should intervene, but it's okay. So your estimate is we should be able to go up to 5 and finish.
If we go up to 5 or 6, Chair, there was one witness also, which is simply a corroboratory witness.
Yeah.
A very, very short witness.
Yes, yeah.
And that is the one that is going to be led by my colleague. And
that one would be about 5 minutes, I
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So from Mr. Tukwana, if you can do 1 hour or so.
Okay, let's take a short break. Let's take a short break. 10 minutes or 15 minutes?
10 minutes, Chair.
10 minutes should
10
do.
minutes.
Okay, we'll resume at 4:10. We adjourn.
which you can locate it from page 22, from paragraph 74, referring to the housing heist through implementing agent. Can you please proceed dealing with the relevant facts under that topic? Can you switch on your mic, please?
Chairperson, this one, you've got not only in the housing, in the Free State, the implementing agents are all over, and in some cases, they speak to what I had raised earlier on of a system that is there, creating redundancy on the other hand of government departments. You would have this case, for instance, in the FDC, the use for the FDC has a particular responsibility in the Free State, and key to that would be to deal with businesses in the province and development of also SMMEs, etc. In dealing with that, because it became very difficult to get more funding for this particular thing, it then created a portfolio that deals with owning properties and managing properties to get resources that would add up to your coffers as FTC. But unfortunately, it came out that the board decided that it will remove all those issues that were not core business in the FTC, and part of it was properties. So they started selling properties, disposing of properties, and unfortunately that was killing what was giving the money in terms of keeping to them and working out their mandates. But what is very interesting is once you do that, you take a responsibility that is not even your mandate. For when the project in Friede of 1,000 houses could not be successfully completed, the Department of Housing appointed FDC as an implementing agent.
Do you mean there had been a decision to build 1,000 houses in Friede?
There was a decision taken by the department long time ago to build houses in Friede, 1,000 of those units.
Yes. Okay.
But the contractor that was appointed could not do much, and almost about 800 or so houses were left and were not built. And as
were
such,
not completed.
Were not even built.
They were not even, the building didn't even start.
No, it had not started.
In regard to 800.
Almost 800, even
Almost
more than
800.
Yes.
And only about 200 of
Less than 200
were
yes.
built.
Yes.
And those were built to completion. Or maybe
Some
not,
of them.
or some of them.
Some of them.
Okay. All right.
Then at the time, the new board was appointed, I think this year. The FDC.
The FDC board.
Yes. The old board had also Mr. Mukhesi as a member of the FDC board. Remember, Mr. Mukhesi is the head of Department of Housing, and then had the chairperson of the board is Mayor Hansi Mayes.
But while you are there, is it permissible? Is it possible? How is it possible that Mr. Mkhesi would be part and parcel of FDC?
I don't know, but as I said, anything in the Free State is normal.
Under which department did the FDC fall in terms of the provincial government?
Economic development.
Economic development.
Yes, sir.
And this, Mr. Mkhesi was
HOD
in the human
in
settlement.
human settlement.
Yes.
And serve at some stage.
Okay.
As according to the information that also we collected, was at some stage and a member of the board.
And you were saying who was the chair at the time? Who was the
It
chair?
was Memayez Hansi.
Yes, okay. Now, in relation to paragraph 78, you make mention of companies called Unital Holdings as well as Mafuri.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mokoena, I think I interrupted Mr. Dugona before he could complete a certain point he was making about this project with the contractors having failed. I thought he was
Yes.
he was in the middle of a sentence to say, in the light of that failure, what happened
Yes.
Of the
of the contractors to
free
build the houses.
The department felt that you needed to fast-track the building, appointed FDC as an implementing agent. And in this case, I pointed out that it is very interesting that the HOD, then these responsibilities to deal with housing, you've got COGTA, somebody is the HOD, and you've got requisite skill or skills in the department in terms of people who would know, who would have technical know-how in terms of making sure that they follow up all these projects and report the progress, engineers, etc. Now, taking this and taking it to FDC, maybe when I left, they amassed the skills that would allow them to be an implementing agent in the housing field, wherein then what is very interesting is that the details, this is something that I'm trying to say, it needs thorough investigation as to how and why was it allowed to happen. The chairperson of the board has a company, I think it's Moono, or something, Moono, Moono, is then appointed to complete the 800 units in Friede. And nobody sees that as a problem. I'm the chairperson of the board. I'm appointed as an implementing agent, and then my company gets business to go and fix and do that. And the argument that would be going out in response, the person would say, "I was not involved in giving out the houses." But this is what I'm trying to say, that once things start happening, people don't even see when things are wrong. And the question also is, why would this be given to FDC when FDC did not possess the experience and the requisite skills that would be needed to monitor and deal with this project? And there's no explanation, Chairperson, other than it was facilitated to ensure that it gets to the chairperson. Other than that, I can't explain, because you can't have this and then it happens this way, and FDC cannot explain itself. And I don't think FDC, other than saying the person would arrogantly indicate that I was not part, therefore there was no conflict of interest in this matter.
Well, maybe before we proceed, just tell me if you are able to, this concept of an implementing agent, if you are able to, where it comes from within government, because when I was hearing evidence with regard to the Friede Dairy farm, it came up. We haven't finished the evidence. I haven't finished hearing the evidence of Mr. Tabete, who was the HOD of the Department of Agriculture at the time. But I gained the impression, rightly or wrongly, that it may well be that at least that department, I don't know whether the whole provincial government, that department may have been using implementing agents for purposes of bypassing or circumventing procurement procedures. So, but I haven't had a chance to ask Mr. Tabete, where did this whole concept come from? Did it come from the whole of government? Is it a known concept to say under certain circumstances a government department can resort to implementing agents, or is it something that certain departments decided to do on their own? Are you able to say anything to me about this whole concept?
If I can indicate, the Department of Public Works, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health, I think these are the department housing. These are the departments in the Free State that are using implementing agents. By way of example, in fact, you have a department, in some instances, the Department of Agriculture paid so much money, in some instances almost about 905 million to some projects, to some companies, implementing agents. And the only reason that you can find this explanation, Chairperson, is to circumvent the supply chain provisions. And what also is worrying, in some instances, there was a report, for instance, in the Department of Agriculture by the Auditor General, who could not get into the finances of these implementing agents because they are private companies, and the Auditor General cannot audit those private companies. So the department will take the resources, every budget, whatever that is meant for projects, capital project, and they will take them to the implementing agent, and the implementing agent would not necessarily follow processes, procurement processes or supply chain processes. Then they will appoint. So it is actually, as you say, it is a scheme in the province that Simfun takes money without accounting, but you can justify that I gave the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture gave about 3 implementing agents, and I think it would be the cost for 3 years, almost more than 3 billion. And in terms of accounting, the same person who was here could not do that because they were saying, we gave the responsibility to the implementing agent, and the Auditor General found it very difficult to audit and raise this matter, but it is still continue. This is a problem.
I don't understand, because the Auditor General would be entitled to say, you as the department owe an explanation as to how this amount that you gave to somebody else was spent. You can't just give money and then wash your hands off it. This is taxpayers' money. Where is the need to give the money to somebody else to do what your own department is supposed to do? Because I would imagine that if you are a department of agriculture, for example, or of housing, you need to identify skills that the department must have, and skills that it must have in sufficient numbers in order to implement its programs. And therefore, generally speaking, you should be able to have people who will implement your programs as a department who would have the right skills. It may be that in certain circumstances, and maybe they should be really very rare, where you might have to go outside. But generally, one would expect that you would have people with skills to carry out your programs. And therefore, it becomes difficult to understand why is there a need for you to give a service provider to implement your own programs, but also certainly now to to say now you wash your hands of how that money has been used. It seems to be something else. But your impression is your impression that it might be used, this concept of an implementing agent might be used to bypass or circumvent or avoid complying with procurement procedures as well?
Chairperson, when I started, I indicated that a system is built in the province. And because there are no consequences, once the Auditor General can make the findings, that is why if you check, you'll find that the province is actually not performing very well. And this also is extended to local government.
Yes, but is it your impression?
My impression is it is meant only to circumvent the supply chain.
Yes.
Yes. There is no other explanation. But as I was saying, also in the local government, they would have deviations which were meant or which are meant only for emergencies. But people will have deviations just to avoid going through the process for something that is not even urgent.
As far as you know, from your experience in government, you don't know of any prescripts that particularly allow this thing of implementing agents?
No, at the time when we were there, it was not a common occurrence, so I would not know. But I think it would be there, but not at the scale that is
at which it is
happening in the Free State.
Okay,
You are referencing two companies in your statements, the one called Unital Holdings and Mafure, who are also the beneficiaries, according to you, to the housing heist. Are you able to tell us as to who are the individuals that might have been associated with these companies?
Mafure, let me read this, it will be better that way to make sure that we keep to the time that we have. There was also a company called Mafure with links to Ms. Toko Alice Malembe, the daughter of Mr. Mahashule. There was also a company called Unital Holdings Limited with its principal place of business in Wynberg in Johannesburg. Mr. Lian Ling Lee, Mr. Lee, and Ms. Malembe are directors of this company. For ease of reference, I annex the to DM18 a copy of the NHBRC form providing the directorship. Both Mafure and Unital Holdings benefited from the housing heist in the Free State, especially with regard to the Vogelfontein one.
Can you share with the chair as to how would these entities or individuals have benefited from this housing heist?
The issue is these matters will not be, they will not go for competitive bidding, and it will then happen as you will see also in the in Vogelfontein and in other areas, that as you check number 80, where the modus operandi of the housing heist was simple in the Free State, the Free State Department of Housing would award a housing contract to build a certain number of units. Not one unit is built, and the Free State government do not follow up to ensure that monies from the public purse are accounted for in compliance with the PFMA. In some instances, houses would be built and not completed and will be handed over to a new contractor to complete.
And yet,
you don't indicate in regard to this topic the years when this happened. Which years are we talking about here?
I think I'm not sure exactly with the years at the moment, but I think it was early 2011, 2012, somewhere there.
Yes, but at that time, Mr. Mukhetsi, was he head of the Human Settlement Department already?
when it started, the Volksfontein, I think it started way back, but he would have presided over it as it continues.
Right.
You see, like the houses in Friede started 2013, 2014.
Would you remember around about which year he might have become HOD of that department, Mr. Mokgweetsi? Or you would not?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm just thinking about what you say in paragraph 77, namely that Mr. Mokgweetsi, the very same HOD of the AFSDHS, was a board member of the FDC, but we know that at some stage it was somebody else.
No, I'm
So
talking
in
about
2010.
the time when this matter was referred, when the FDC was appointed, he was an HOD.
Yes.
Yes.
But
So-
you don't remember when that was.
I think because it would be 2015, 2016.
Oh,
But
okay.
somewhere there, 2016, 2017.
Okay, much later than
Yes,
2010.
yes.
Okay.
You are still explaining to the chair with reference to paragraph 81 and as to how would these entities benefit from the scheme?
The number 81, as alternatively, the department would appoint an implementing agent, advance millions to the implementing agent, and the latter would appoint service providers to build houses. In many instances, the directors of the companies rendering services in this regard would be person politically associated with Mr. Magashule. The danger that you see in many of these, it's like myself, Chairperson, I would register a company, no skills whatsoever in terms of housing, and then I will be awarded with a tender to build, let's say, 1,000 houses or 500 houses. Normally, what these people would do, they will then appoint a subcontractor, and in some instances, you just determine the amount. If, for instance, I say all I need is 10,000 per unit, without lifting a shovel or not, and then the rest it's for you to complete and do and make sure that you build these houses. So I get the tender. I'm the person who applied. I get the tender, but the tender I get the money. The money that I will get is just 10,000 per unit if you have it, and then multiply by 1,000 if those are the houses that I get. That will be the money that will come to me, and I would not have incurred any cost in terms of that. Then you then appoint contractors, people who know the job, and they will be contractors, and then they will complete and do the job. In some instances, because the money that they have is not enough to do this and also profit, you're tempting them to actually do some things that are
Shoddy
not
work.
correct. I beg yours?
To do some shoddy work?
Yes, they would, because you want also to live. So that's what you would have in this. And so I'm just saying that this matter needs to be followed up thoroughly to get the role of the implementing agents and also people who are getting these tenders, and check who then becomes the subcontractor and what is it that the person as a contractor did in working in the project. You would find it does not happen. I mean, you may have a company building a road and then subcontracting some companies to do something. But in this case, in the housing, some people, I just get the money and I stay, and then you continue with whatever you have. And also, because the contract is written in my name, and then I'm the one who's buying the material, I will then get something from VAT, so claim VAT for that. So this is the thing that is happening in the province, and I don't know whether it is prevalent in other provinces. You've got qualified people, companies that are ready to do the building, but in some cases they will not even bother because they know they will not get the work. And then you give people, I mean, there's so many people, you see that they call themselves business people, but a person will not even have a truck, etc. They will be driving in these beautiful cars, but they are in the construction business without any trucks to do the work. So I'm just saying, in short, this is what these things are all about.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the company that is called Major Bricks, would it also be one of the beneficiaries to the scheme?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
This is also the company that benefited in houses in Bethlehem, and also in houses in areas in Virginia versus Bron and Botterville. And you can go and check some of the shoddy work in those areas. And poor people are made to sign happy letters, Chairperson. You're staying in a shack, and then the house, you know, there are roofings, etc., and then it's not completed, and many other things are still outstanding. But the contractor will come and say, for me to have this, sign a happy letter, and you can go and be security in this house. We will finish some of the work while you're there, so that people do not cause problems with your house. So poor people, some would then sign this not knowing that they are sending happy letters. Happy letters would be that the house is finished and everything is there and you are happy. And in some instances, for instance, in Westersbron and Botterville, people who are tasked in terms of going out and checking this, they're finding it very difficult to get this Mr. Lee to repair some of the things. And in some cases, he has made some remarks that I would not repeat here, Chairperson, to those people who are tasked with this, to make sure that they go and check these buildings.
Yes. Now, you, and then who was the owner of Major Bricks?
Mr. Jackie Gao,
Okay.
at the time when it was still next to Henneman.
You conclude that topic with reference to page 25, paragraph 84 to 86. If you may take us through those paragraphs.
Chairperson, it needs to be emphasized that the implementing agency scheme in the Free State was operating in various departments and municipalities. Central to it was to transfer monies outside government department to an entity that would perpetually execute a project. Once the funds have been placed with an implementing agent, the latter appoints without due process service providers, and that is the beginning of the distribution of sharing ill-gotten taxpayers' money. The feast commences and the indigents bear the brunt of those whose time it is to eat. But the caveat was that looting of the public purse at a scale inexplicable has to be carried out to advance corrupt interest of our leaders, such as Mr. Mahashule, Mr. Zwane, and others. And Mr. Lee has close links with Mr. Mahashule, it is a known fact. I cannot rule out the possibility that Mr. Lee and Ms. Malembe's business ventures were facilitated and blessed by Mr. Mahashule, especially going to Volkfontein, that if we were to invite the mayor, the then mayor in the area in Bethlehem to come and deal with us and collaborate what I'm saying, Chairperson. I invite the commission to investigate.
What's the name of the mayor?
Chetan Mufuke. It's Mr. Mufuke.
Mr. Mofokeng.
Yes,
And the name?
Chetan.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
I invite the commission to investigate their business relationship and the circumstances that led to government resorting to implementing agency scheme for services delivery purposes. And this has to do with the departments that I mentioned. In some instances, Chairperson, you had people who were directors in departments in some regions who would not do anything because the work that they're supposed to be doing is now being carried by the implementing agents. And some of these directors were coming to the office to sign leave forms and others. So that is the frustrating impact of all this, the implementing agency.
So effectively, with this, with the use of implementing agencies, you could have a situation where personnel within the department who are supposed to do that job are not doing that job, but that job is being done by an implementing agent, and the department is basically paying two sources for the same job, paying the officials that it employed to do this kind of job and paying the implementing agent.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair, before moving to a new topic, my learned colleague, Mr. Manyi, has quite important information, which is almost in line with the evidence that was given by Mr. Tukwana pertaining to the application, which we're
yes.
asking ourselves questions as to what could have happened with it.
Oh, yes.
Maybe I should allow him
Allow him
just to
to,
place it on
yes.
record. It's quite important, I think,
Yes, thank
in
you.
all fairness as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, it has since transpired that indeed the question that the Commission was puzzled with as to whether what happened to the application that was brought to the High Court in the Free State by the MEC, Timothy Mokhesi, that matter has been finalized. The orders indeed are as follows, Chair, that the agreements and the decisions pertaining thereto are reviewed and set aside. And bar for the 2nd and 44th and 65th respondents in that application that actually wanted to proceed and challenge the issues on the merits in the court. But for the other 102 applicants, indeed the order were given and they
did not oppose.
They did not oppose. The date of the order is the 26th of August 2019, instead of the review
That
court.
is Monday this week.
Indeed, so.
Oh, okay. Do you know whether it's just an order or there is a full judgment?
Chair, I'm not certain
You're not
because this
sure.
just came now
Oh, okay.
to me, as I've indicated earlier on. This would have been part of the
Yes.
response if indeed Mr. Mokhesi
Yes.
had received a notice that we alluded to earlier on.
No, thank you very much. That's useful information. Thank you.
Chair.
It would be also interesting to lay our hands to the judgment, Chair, to see
Yes, yes, and all the papers.
all the papers as
Yeah,
well.
okay.
Now, the next topic, Mr. Tukwana, is Bleki Siwe, not Sue, as some of the people refer to him. Now, can you tell us about his relevance to the issues that are to be determined by this commission and what you wish to highlight in relation to him?
When I was the MEC for Economic Development, Mr. Blegisiwe was the chairperson of the FDC.
Just raise your voice a little bit again.
I'm saying,
Bring-
at the time when I was MEC, at least up until 2012, Mr. Siwe was, Blegisiwe was the chairperson of the board. And it transpired that at the later stage, what actually happened, the FDC decided, as I said earlier, to dispose of some of the properties that they had. It had ownership of filling stations, it had buildings, it had also a number of student accommodation, etc. And those, as I said, were source of revenue for FDC. I don't have the benefit of the reasons and the logic behind the FDC deciding this matter. Probably the MECs that came after me would know why this matter then happened the way it happened. And in the same vein, Chairperson, that some of these people then benefited, and some of these people that benefited in the whole scheme of things are also in some boards. They are either chairperson or members of the boards in the Free State, and a close, neat group of people around Mr. Magashule. In this case, you would have Mr. Blekisiwe, who would have benefited a lot in terms of the properties, etc. And we would know at some stage up until 2008 that Mr. Blekisiwe and Mr. Magashule were part of were directors of a company called Sambal. And at the time, chairperson, when Mr. Magashule was MEC for sport, Mr. Blekisiwe benefited a lot in terms of promotion and using the ROPS promotion as the company, and became the highest paying, if you like, or among the highest paying promoters in boxing at the time. But interestingly to note, immediately Mr. Magashule moved to the other department, and Mr. Hlasela came in the department. The ROPS promotion just disappeared, and that will tell you the whole story. And in this case, Mr. Glenn Chivotsa also being part of the times the tourism board, etc., and very close friend or very, very close person to Mr. Magashule. I know this for a fact, Chairperson, because I know Mr. Glenn Chivotsa quite well, and also Mr. Magashule, and their relationship coming back, far back from Paris, etc. And you will see the benefits in some of this. And in fact, there was student accommodation that were putting some income into this. And at some stage, these were given or supposedly purchased by Mr. Nechivosa, and as such, the FDC would not have enjoyed the benefits of the using these, monthly, the income that it will come back into the coffers of the FDC. So I'm just stating the fact that sometimes these things look innocent, but these are some of the things that need to be investigated thoroughly to understand why exactly this has happened. And especially when you look into the ROPS investment portfolio, it will be interesting, Chairperson, to note, that from April 2018 to March 2019, ROPS investment property had buildings like Sevilla Building, Housing Social Development, what the company benefited through rentals from that period, April 2018 to March 2019, it's almost 10,485,298, and the Sitting Social Development, it's 4,865,000, and you also have Sitting Economic Development is there, the first floor, 379,000, and Sinodale Education is there, 6,540,000, and LM Building Cooperative Governance, 13,359,000. And then you've got Sambal Investment, where Mr. Blekisiwe is also the owner. You have Warden Building, Housing Sports Arts, 6 million, Business Partner Sports Arts, 6 million, 6.5, Safe Rates Building, Old Salam Building, and all these, from that period to this, you're talking about almost 64 million.
Who would be the tenants of those buildings?
I said, I was mentioning social development.
It will be government departments.
Yes, government departments.
But what page were you reading from?
We don't have the benefit of that information. Mr.
Yes, I'm trying
No.
to look for
I
these
must
figures.
indicate, just to indicate, Chairperson, I think there was some miscommunication because even with my attorneys, when I met with the investigators of the commission, I gave them this information.
Yes.
And unfortunately, every time I was looking for it, I thought, because they said they had given the information to my attorneys.
Yes.
And this also led to this kind of a situation.
Not being included.
Not being included.
Oh.
And we're preparing this, but I'm
Yes.
just stating that
Yes.
I think if the chairperson allows, we can ask my legal team to also prepare
A supplementary,
supplementary
yes.
affidavit that would
Yes.
have all these details and written down and everything in
No,
detail.
that would be,
And if that is allowed, Chairperson,
Yes.
it would mean that we can leave this matter and I can provide details.
supplementary, yeah.
Very to the details, as well as the implementing agents and how much these implementing agents found,
Yes.
received from government. So if Chairperson allows that, that is what I would suggest we do.
it may be very useful and important information. The only thing is that if they don't know what it is, there might be a problem. But if they know what it is, they might be able to say, even if you talk to it now, it's fine, I would rely on them. But if they don't know what the information is, it would be better that a supplementary affidavit be done later.
It would be better, Chair, because remember that when we commenced with our opening,
Yes.
we referred to quite a number of documents.
Three notices.
Notices
Yes.
and also affidavits, and I believe that
Yes.
Mr. Siwe, it's one of the people that reacted to also Mr. Tukwana's statement.
Yes.
And those things have to be put to Mr. Tukwana for him also to deal with them accordingly.
Yeah.
In all fairness, so that we don't leave out any affidavit of any witness, and that he must react
So it's
to it
better to
accordingly.
deal with it
Yes.
in a supplementary statement.
Yes.
I would
Okay.
agree, Chairperson, with that, and also because I was very reluctant in terms of also providing some information because it involves also some institutions
Yes.
in terms of what has happened.
Yes, okay.
But safe to say, in some instances, Chairperson, that what would be demonstrated will be Company A, the same company. Company A would have this, and then a holding company. You buy a building, say, for 29 million. You sell it to your own company for 89 million. You approach the bank, and then you bond the property for 200 million. So I'm just saying these are some of the things that I think, not referring to any in particular person here, I'm
Yeah.
saying this is one thing
A
that
practice.
I would have provided in terms of the information that we have. And that's why I'm saying, for all these people, in fairness to many of these people, if I can be allowed to
Yes.
put in a supplementary affidavit,
Yes.
that will also be fair to some of the people that
Yes.
are mentioned here.
No, that's fine. That's the arrangement.
From
I think it looks like we all agree that that's the better route to follow.
Yes, Chair, it is, and I did intimate to Mr. Mkwena that we've obtained
Further information.
further information,
Yes.
and part of it, I think, Mr. Tukwana deals with in his supplementary statement,
Yes.
and I think it would be, we've already contacted the investigation team
Yes.
to get information from us.
Okay.
And I think
It's-
by way of a supplementary statement, it will
It
settle
should be
it.
fine.
But it's quite voluminous
Yes,
of the
okay.
implementing agents.
Okay.
It's as recent as last June. It's as
Okay.
recent as June,
As June.
Chairperson.
Yes.
And Mr. Tukwana will deal with some of the aspects as we
Yeah.
go on. Yes.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, on that note, and I'm sorry to interject, Chair, the version has been, different version has been provided in the statement of Mr. Sewen. referencing certain paragraphs that he was referred to respond to,
Yes.
that Mr. Dukwana indeed has alluded to. So
Yes.
it would only be fair if
Yes.
indeed that version was placed before Mr. Dukwana,
Yes.
and it will address some of the confusion that is now emanating from
Yes.
the evidence that is now giving. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. I'm
We-
sure.
Chair, we are aware about that. The
Yeah.
only problem is that we operate within the rules. And those documents that we received were were received this week, some of them, others last week Friday. And with all fairness to Mr. Tokwana or anyone else, one could not even
There
have
hasn't been enough time
dealt with
to.
them. Definitely, Chair.
Yes.
If we're provided with this information within the time prescribed, one would understand what is being conveyed to you now. But in all fairness, all that we said we'll compile all the documents relevant, we'll make them available to Mr. Tokwana, and he will react according to them.
And then he can, if necessary, file an affidavit that responds to
Definitely.
that. And then, if there's a need, he can come back to deal with all of those issues.
And not only that, it will also be fair and interesting to have those that are submitting letters and affidavit
Yeah.
to avail themselves to the commission.
Yeah.
Let them come and sit like Mr. Tokwana. Let them be confronted with the issues arising from there.
Yeah.
That will also give cognizance and meaning to this paramount concept of fairness.
Yes.
Chair,
No, that's fine.
Chair,
Yes.
the notices were received, as we indicated yesterday, that were received only on the 17th of August, and they were responded to.
Yes.
And they indeed also tabulate as to what options are available to the receiving party of that notice.
Yes.
And if indeed one decides to respond to that in the form of a statement, it is
Yes.
also very acceptable because it is an option that is availed
Yes.
to that response. So,
I-
contrary to what Mr. Mokwena is saying,
Yes.
as far as availing themselves and being subjected to cross-examination or whatever,
Yes.
they have exercised available.
Yeah, I
and
think
opted
the bottom line is that what Mr. Mokwena is saying is those statements have been received. There may be something about when they were received, but he is saying there hasn't been enough time for them to be given to Mr. Tukwana to consider them, but also part of what the legal team and the investigators are supposed to do after receiving such responses is to see whether there is anything to investigate in relation to the contents of those statements. And when that has been done, then they come back to the legal team to say, okay, this is what we find about what is said here. Maybe this is true or this is not true. This we're not sure about. So when it's put to the witness, it ensures that there is fairness. I think what he's simply saying is, yes, an opportunity will be created, but it might not be the right time now because there hasn't been enough time for Mr. Tukwana to consider them.
Accepted, Chair, but by that time the horses were already bolted. And
Well, no, nobody can say that your client's version would have been put to Mr. Tukwana as of today if it's not put. But I think that most of the time what we have had since last year is that the versions have come later than the time when the witness has given evidence, because even those who apply for leave to cross-examine, usually they come late and so on. I think as long as the public understands that there is another version that may be coming or that will be put to him.
thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, also to clarify one or two things. Mr. Blake Isiwe was served with the Rule 3.3. On the
Your
27th
voice
of
has gone
August.
down again.
He was served with the 3.3 notice on the 1st of August, 26
Yes.
days before today's hearing.
Yeah.
He was consulted with by the investigators on 3 occasions.
Yes.
And I think we should place those on record.
Yes.
And the statement that you are receiving now is, we'll leave it there.
Yeah, let's leave it on the basis that I've indicated.
Yes.
Let's
But
leave
there
it
are
on that
facts to deal with
basis.
these things.
Yes, we are at 5 o'clock. Let's
Move on.
let's try and finish, because I
Yes.
think we are close to finishing.
We are.
Yes.
From page 27, paragraph 92, you are then dealing with a person who is the former employee of the Free State Legislature. Can give us the name and give us the context upon which we have to understand your evidence.
I'm sorry, you said from page?
Page 27, paragraph 92. Mr. Chair,
Okay.
to paragraph 95.
I thought, Chairperson, this would also include in terms of what we have agreed on,
Yes.
because it falls into the element of the properties, so that we give all the details.
Yes.
So I would
Oh,
suggest that this
You deal
this
with
should
it
be
We'll
given.
deal with some point.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. We can now move to the concept that might be known to many, starting from page 28 at your paragraph G, and it's Operation Hlasela. Well, you can tell the chair about it and its relevance to your testimony.
Chairperson, sometime in 2009, after the elections, the premier of the newly elected premier, Mr. Mahashule, ordered all members of the executive committee that were newly appointed as members of the executive committee to attend a service that was held in Bloemfontein by a church called Tyrannus Apostolic Church. And during that, there was a big banner, that was 2009. There was a big banner that was written, Operation Hlasela, 1 million members by December 2009. And after the service, when...
And you were an MEC at the time?
Yes,
you
we
attended?
were newly appointed MECs in 2009. And then I'm just sketching the origin of this thing. And Mr. Mahashule noticed that, and when it was time, when he was given an opportunity to address the congregants, he then asked permission from the head of the church to use the Operation Hlasela.
The name or title, or that phrase?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was granted, and then because he was saying this government will use to Hlasela is to attack.
Yes.
So it will be used to attack poverty, crime, everything. And then when we came back, there was this Operation Hlasela, it was all over. When it started, we would, departments would be asked that if it goes to Velcom, for instance, departments would be asked to indicate what is it that they would contribute in terms of development in the area. And so departments will then do that as when it started earlier. And what was very interesting in that was the fact that the premier of the Free State, the then premier of the Free State, would be having this mic, and some people would come, and then a person would say, I am so and so, I have a degree in sports management and all this. And the person would then be there, and there you will be told you are appointed. Come go to this department, and then they would deal with the matter. Or some people would then write the details, everything. So it created the whole excitement that you've got a person who moves, who's moving, who's implementing. But it was made difficult for officials because at the time, all of you as MECs, officials, senior officials, you must be there. And when this thing happens, so it created quite a problem. And at the time, then the ANC then wanted to deal with the matter so that you give it content. And the secretary at the time was Comrade Besani, Sbongile Besani. We tried to bring some content into that and make sure that it is about coordination of government work, and make sure that you destroy these silos and make sure that government works as government, not departments going there. But little did we know that it was not this noble idea. It is actually to centralize everything in this office. For instance, I'll make an example in the department that I headed. It would be, as one understood that as an MEC, you are actually playing a role of advising the Premier. It's your responsibility to protect the Premier and make sure whatever comes to the Premier or head of government at the time is processed properly. And this is what we thought we would do and do that. But it was difficult because Mr. Makashule, the Premier then, would meet with the officials without us knowing. Would be there with some, would not even be HODs in the department, would be people who are, appointed to deal with Hlasela projects. In my case, for instance, when the project was going to, Hlasela was visiting Wate. They have about 5 towns, and the late Dr. Matebula then came to me to say he was from a meeting, and the meeting wanted, in the meeting they were told by the Premier that they must contribute, and the department was supposed to contribute 50,000 per town for car washes. And when they came to me demanding that, I advised them that I will speak to the Premier. I did that exactly to say we can't do this in this particular way. It created some problems. But all I'm trying to say is this is what you would find, that Hlasela ended up not being what the concept that you see there, that I have indicated that that it was meant to facilitate good governance, effective leadership, effective service delivery, coordination of activities to make sure that services are delivered. Instead, it ended up ensuring total control of public procurement by the Premier. It became clear that the Premier wanted to know exactly what each department was doing and make sure that you know, and you are able to direct everything and make sure that you are in control. And it goes, as I'm saying, this Operation Hlasela. In some instances, it affected local government. We ended up treating local government as we are a big brother, as the province, and at any given time, a meeting will be called, and then all CFOs or all municipal managers and mayors are called. So you leave whatever, you come over. It was not something that will be properly planned, respecting this other sphere of government and what the Constitution stipulated, that you need to, it has a role to play, and also you don't need to be crouching into the space of the other sphere of government. But from time to time, provincial government needed to help the municipalities in terms of dealing with their work, and you needed also to have that interrelationship between national, provincial, and local government. But as I'm saying, Hlasela destroyed all that.
Now tell me, in terms of the appointments that you alluded to that you would be required or instructed to make, would there be any processes that are followed? Would there be vacancies for those positions?
You know, I remember when we had a meeting in Velcom of the unemployed graduates. The hall was full, and everyone would raise whatever they have, everything and all that, and people would be promised, you must go there, you must go there, you must go there. In one occasion, Chairperson, I was confronted by people who were appointed at Operation Hlasela meeting, who came to the department And they were saying they are sent, they must start today. And at the time, there was no advertisement, there was no vacancy, and all I did was to say, I did not appoint you. Did you see me, the department, having an advertisement? No, but now, how do you come? You have never been, you have never gone to an interview.
You've never applied for a
You
job.
have never applied, you have not gone to an interview, but here you come and you want to, you say you were sent, and then I sent them to the Premier and even phoned him to say, there are 2 people who are here, and then I'm sending them. He said, please attend to them. I said, I can't, I don't have any space. So I'm just saying, this was a noble idea when it started.
Were they
it-
not sent to, at these Hlasela meetings, did the Premier maybe not say, please go to that department and see whether there's a vacancy and so that you can apply and then and so on? Did he say you are appointed, you are going to start on that and that day?
In some instances, Chairperson, he would say, if you say, and then you come and say, I have this, he said, okay, go to the department, so and so. In some instances, he would say, okay, you may start, you are appointed. And you could see the excitement in the hall. People were worked out that, yes, the Premier is working, you are appointed in this, you are appointed. In some instances, I think it also became unbearable to him to realize that it is not sustainable to deal with the matter in that fashion. But as I'm saying, it became very difficult also to protect the Premier in the sense that when you get into, he will be the one who introduces his team, he will be the one who is a project, as MC of the whole event. From morning up until you leave, it will be him with the mic and engaging people. So it created a cult, if you like. He was then seen as this person who is a mover, who is doing all these things. But the unfortunate thing, you were putting MECs in a corner. MECs would not have, in the department, would not have budgeted anything for that particular area. You get into a hall, and then MEC of Public Works sees that, hey, there's something wrong here. And when she's asked, because we were made to stand up and say, this is what I will do, and this is what I will do, and then a person will stand up and say, no, I'm going to fix this hall, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I mean, it became a mockery, if you like, and this is the problem that we experience. And even if we tried, but it was working for him in terms of, creating that euphoria and people getting excited. It was good for that. But unfortunately, it was a nightmare for even administrators in terms of what you need to do. But also causing problems, because you would have a person in a particular space who has been in the department quite a long time, no promotion. You come in and then you are appointed a deputy director or something without going through the processes. So I'm just saying this became a problem, this Operation Hlasela, instead of helping. But for other people out there, as it was an excitement, it created excitement, it created, in some instances, Chairperson, in Virginia, just to make an example, and a painful experience, happened. There is a mother who is staying with her family, etc., in a shack. And across the street is a 2-roomed house and a shack. And because it was decided that we are going to destroy the 2-roomed houses and then build the better houses for these people. And this mother, when people were destroying, Premier will get into this ganda and get into the house and destroy the house.
The Premier would drive the tractor.
I would be there, Chairperson, demonstrating, and then it goes there, it destroys this, and people are excited. This mother then said, why don't you take my side and build a house there and move me from this mukuku, and please, and get me this 2-roomed at least. But, we could not answer these because already the house was down. So I'm just
Were
indicating.
the shacks being destroyed before another house is being built or what?
No, you get there, Chairperson, you don't have an alternative house, etc. You get there just to demonstrate that we are going to work. And then you will be told we will get accommodation somewhere for you. In some instances, we had families that stayed longer because these were not forthcoming. But as I'm saying, it would happen in some areas. In some areas, when some of the things worked and things were, people would be happy. But in some cases, you will find that we leave, there's excitement when we are there. We leave and nothing actually happens. Even people who had promised that they will go back and build this and do this, it will not be done. So I'm just saying, this created a lot of problem for us as MECs and for administrators. But
Yes.
it was a noble idea, and planned properly, it would have helped the province.
Yes.
Yes, thank
You are
you.
touching also on a topic which the chair have heard from many witnesses and other streams pertaining to the TNA and how the media communications procurement of newspapers were sourced. If you can deal with that within the context of Free State, and what do you know?
If a chairperson allows,
Yes.
there's a detailed information with regard to this. I would suggest that
That we
that
deal
will
with it
outline
later.
everything.
Okay.
I would suggest that from this file, we prepare something instead of dealing
Yes.
with it piecemeal.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine.
And the next topic, the Executive Council meetings. You did allude to it, but I think you might want to elaborate on that topic.
Did you deliberately skip the other topics, or he has dealt with them?
No, he has dealt with them,
Sanitizing?
Chair.
Eh?
He has dealt with them.
Oh, and the scholarship, okay. Has it
It's
dealt with
Operation
scholarship?
Hlasela?
I think there's somebody who wishes to say something.
I think Chair skipped H, media and communications.
No, H is still coming.
Yes, okay.
G was Operation Hlasela. H, that's where we are. Chair.
And that is what I suggested. I asked the person that if I can be given the permission
Yes.
Yes.
to provide detailed information.
And that's why,
Yes, H, yeah.
that's why then I went to I.
Yes.
We have agreed that media and communications will be dealt with later because you want to supply more information.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why, Chair, we then on page 30,
Yes, sir.
then that's I.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Chairperson, in terms of the Constitution and also what governs the province, as the Executive Council would be your cabinet. And people who sit in Executive Council would be people who have taken an oath of confidentiality and all those things.
Yes.
And that would be the MECs and the Director General and a person who would be appointed as the Secretary of the Executive Council. My experience throughout, I've served in a number of these with a number of other premiers. But when it came to 2009, in this case, Chairperson, you would have, just to protect the executive, there were processes that will be put in place. Subcommittees of cabinet, of the executive committee, etc., and making sure you process anything that needs to serve before the Executive Council. Something very strange started happening. In this case, you would have an EXCO meeting starting at 9 o'clock.
In the morning.
In the morning, that's every second Wednesday. It starts at 9 o'clock. And once you are there, you will find that you have HODs, CFOs in the meeting. It's a huge, it's a huge church now. And then you get people coming in to make presentations. Business people will come in and make presentation. And in some instances, you would see that there was contact between these people and the chair and the person who's chairing, in this case, the Premier. And they will always come from the office of the Premier, meaning they would have started there and the Premier would then take them to the Executive Council. So what would then happen in those meetings? You make a presentation, you listen to presentation, Chairperson. I'm not exaggerating this. From 9 o'clock, in some instances, 10 o'clock up until 4 o'clock, you listen into presentations, people present and then leave. And then the impression created at that time is that for the officials who are there, and then as the chair, I then say to you, you come and introduce that you can construct a road using this particular method, etc. And the question would then come in after interrogation, after a presentation. If we were to give you something, a space there, and you pilot this, would you agree to such a thing? And ultimately, the business person will say yes. Now you've got the MEC, you've got the HOD, you've got the CFO. They're sitting there. And once the person is then, once he agrees and then referred to the HOD, the problem that the person has agreed to do a pilot. So you are sent to a department to facilitate that. So the HOD would not say no. The MECs were there, the executive was there. So they would then take the matter and you start doing the work. And before you know, this company would have been appointed without following processes, etc., and do some work. But what actually also created problems is that after that, when you now go down, we normally said, you go to the 8th floor, and then when you go to the Executive Council, you go to the 4th floor. And then you'll be sitting as an executive. And you will not take matters that were coming from there, from the presentations that you start with the agenda of the council and you finish with the agenda. But you would see things starting to happen and people would do things. And you will see my problem with this, and I also raised this specifically with the chair to say we need to avoid and work because there were committees established. So whoever wanted to come and make a presentation must start there. So let's, you process everything.
I should start with a subcommittee.
Go to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee will be the one that will come and make a submission and come and make this submission to the executive. The subcommittee will determine whether this matter needs to be dealt with in a particular way without it serving before the executive. Without that processing opportunity, you are opening the Executive Council to a whole range of things. And that was the problem that we experienced. But every time you raise the matter, the then Premier will say, this is, you cannot control me, you want to manage me. This is my way of doing things. You better wait for your moment. So at the end you decide,
Is that wait for your moment to be Premier or what?
Yes.
Okay.
But for now, it's me in control. So allow me to do as I feel. And this also, as a way of an example, Chairperson, and I think what I'm saying, calling MECs that were there would also confirm.
Well, I have had evidence, I think, in relation to either, it might not be Freed, I think it may have related to the aviation sector. I've had evidence which is along those lines that there would sometimes be meetings of the Executive Council that would start, or maybe I'm getting confused, but I've had evidence along the lines that an Executive Council meeting would start at 9 a.m. and would take the whole day, if not more. And at those Executive Council meetings, people outside of the government would come and would attend sometimes. So I'm just not sure whether it may have been Free State or whether it was Northwest, but I seem to think it was the Free State. Yes, okay, all right.
Yes, that was our experience, Chairperson, and the executive will go up until very late dealing with the matters. But what I wanted to, as a way of an example, how compromised the Executive Council would be. In one instance, Chairperson, as an example without also mentioning names, there was a project that was suggested. It was dealing with speedboats. And you have an entity called Pakisa Major Sports Events that will deal with such issues. But the person who was in the marketing...
I'm looking at Mr. Mkwena and your counsel.
I'm getting worried.
They would
No,
know.
I'm not, I'm just making an example. I'm not saying anything.
Maybe it should be dealt with in later if it's
So
going to
that,
mention
you know, we are not seen to be mentioning
entities'
names.
names
No name.
and entities' names. But
No.
I think
All
you're
I
close
needed to say, Chairperson, there was a decision that was taken on the matter and without the matter being discussed in the Executive Council. It was skipped for whatever reason, and later when the Chairperson was about to close, the MEC of Finance indicated that we have an outstanding matter that was not dealt with. And the Chairperson just said, maybe you were not listening or you were outside. And when we said it was not discussed, he said, well, according to me, this matter was discussed. So the Executive Council, the decision then stood as the Executive has discussed the matter, and it had financial implication, that matter. And later on, during the meeting of the Budget Committee, the same matter that had served before the Executive Council with a request of a particular amount. 2 days later, the amount was, it was 600,000, but the amount when it went to the Budget Committee was $1 million. So I'm just saying, these are some of the
way of
challenges.
doing things.
The way of doing things without following process and undermining your processes. And I think these are the problems that we're sitting with under this, the Executive Council and how it operated.
Yes.
Yes.
You are dealing with the other topic of the sanitizing of forensic reports. Explain how this have happened.
what part is that?
On page 31, Chair, paragraph J.
Chairperson, I wanted to...
Sorry. I just want to, page 31.
That is at paragraph J, the topic starting there, Chair.
The topic there is Executive Council meetings.
No, J.
J.
Page 31. 31, Chair.
Oh, you see, I don't
Executive
have
meeting.
page 31. I've got page 30,
And goes
32,
32.
33.
Can give the Chair your pages. I'm not sure how would that happen, Chair.
Well, maybe deal with it, and while somebody is getting me a page, continue. Yes.
Maybe it's for a good cause that you do not have it. In fact, through you, I wanted to find out with Ntate Mkwena.
If we can deal with it some other time.
Yes, because there's a detailed letter from Mr. Fivers.
Okay.
That seems to shed light as to what might have happened here.
Okay. So I guess then let's deal with it some other
That's
time.
fine, Chair. That is in order,
That's in
as long
order.
as it's the legal
Yes.
team of the
Yes, okay.
witness that's in that.
Okay.
Not only Mr. Fivers, but I think Mr. Ramate has also did direct to it.
Yes, okay.
And then let's deal with the one on page 31, International Scholarship Program. Anything that you wish to highlight to the Chair?
Where are we now?
We are
I
on
thought
page
we were going
31.
to the conclusion. Huh?
No, Chair, there's one topic before the conclusion, page 31.
Page 31. Why does it? Oh, that's the one I don't have. Give it to me.
You'll see
Yes.
there is a
Oh,
topic
I had seen such a page.
on
Oh, no, this is page 32 that I'm thinking. Oh, it's 31, but 31 is being written, 1 is being written in a way that maybe I've got it, it's just that I'm misreading it.
Is that day of the, is that time of the page?
No, I don't have it, but I think I did see it. Okay, all right, continue. Let's try and
No,
finish.
I do have it, yes.
Yes.
Chair, may I just indicate that in the same vein that the previous topic has been decided to be shifted or be put in abeyance pending the letters
Yes.
that gives a different version. In the same breath, there has been a version, a detailed version that has been
Yes.
procured for the evidence leaders and, of course, Mr. Dukwana's legal representative, exactly
Okay.
dealing with this
So it
aspect
can be
as well.
dealt with.
We don't know whether indeed they have a sight of it or they will
Yeah.
also want to,
Mr.
shift it
Mkwena?
for later determination. I don't know. But there has been a version that has been given, detailed, with all annexures.
I think maybe
Which-
let's deal with it some
Is
later.
is it K, Mr. Chair?
Indeed,
Okay.
indeed, by the DG.
K, International Scholarship Program.
Indeed so.
Yeah.
Can I, Chairperson, can I ask something? That in dealing with that, in that particular matter, in that particular way, can we also ask that the following things that would, instead of rebutting and doing all that, that the following information should be provided to the Commission that would help, in fact, for instance, the policy outlining this scheme, the bursary.
Yes,
And,
I
and
think-
I think it will help a lot if we get that.
No,
And
that's-
and with all the issues that we are raising.
That's fine. I think what should happen is mention to your legal team the kind of information that you believe would be necessary, and they would share that with the Commission's legal team, and the Commission would try and get it from the Free State provincial government, so that then the Commission could have a full picture. But let's not bother to itemize what information would be required now.
No.
That can be done
Chair,
later.
if I may assist, in
Yes.
fact, the response that has been provided is detailed.
It
to the
might
T.
have some of the
It has
information.
almost everything that Mr. Kwana
Okay,
wants to be
okay.
canvassed in that report.
Yes, but whatever else is required, you would cooperate to
Indeed
give
so.
it, yeah.
Indeed so.
Okay, thank you.
It makes our duty simple, Chair, then we don't have to deal with the topic on letter K, and that concludes Mr. Tukwana's evidence, but I would like for him to deal with his conclusion from page 33, paragraph 117, Mr. Tukwana.
What page?
Page 33, Chair. I hope you're having it. Page 33.
Is that the conclusion?
Yes.
Yes, okay, let him deal with the conclusion.
Mr. Tukwana?
Chairperson, thank you for this opportunity. I believe that as one person who had worked in the province, stayed there, and also in the leadership, both of the party and the government, I'm well versed with the affairs of the province and how the system has concealed corruption and also encouraged it to happen. And I would anticipate that it will be difficult for the Commission to get any cooperation from the Free State government and as well as from the officials who would want to. I'm raising this matter that even as late as yesterday, some of the people were calling me to say we would like, if there is an opportunity for the Commission to hear some of the information that we have in camera, we can provide such information. But people would like to give some information to us, and because they are afraid of the consequences that might follow, especially with regard to officials. As I explained the other day, that if a person were to come here as an official and say things that are not accepted, they will find a way of suspending the person, and they will make it very difficult for the person. As I say, people believe that because I'm in government, I have, an access to resources that is unparalleled. And you as an ordinary member, you would suffer because you would be using your own resources. So I'm just asking that it could also be helpful. And but also, I think the Free State situation that involves also the administration at the local government level. You would know that with the reports that have been released, we are performing very bad. And in fact, technically, I must say, Chairperson, you don't have a government in the Free State. And I would suggest, just putting into the commission and, to raise the issue that if this matter, if the commission has to do some thorough work in terms of helping the process and rebuilding that trust in terms of government, you need the President of the Republic needs to act in terms of Section 100 of the Constitution and put the entire province under administration. It has happened in Limpopo, and I don't understand why the Free State, as we say, only the Department of Finance, it was health and as well as education at some stage were put under administration. But I'm just saying, if we're really serious about dealing with this and uprooting them, there is a need for the President to think of applying Section 100 of the Constitution and put the entire province under administration. In this way, a multidisciplinary team of untainted and independent professionals with no links to Mr. Magashule and his network be put in charge of the government affairs and render assistance to the Commission. I can tell you that you will unearth many things that many people will be surprised that these things do happen. And the principal aim of the team would be to audit every contract in the government departments, state entities and municipalities in the Free State. Without such assistance or intervention, I'm afraid to state that the Commission would be constrained in its performance of its constitutional obligation. I've spoken to a number of government officials in the Free State province, and they are eager to provide information or render assistance to the Commission. Their only fear is that there is no independent vehicle through which they could be of assistance to the Commission. And this is my humble plea in conclusion, Chairperson.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Tukwana. I have identified a special task team that is dealing with the Free State and reporting directly to me. And in regard to the Free State, and both Mr. Mkwena and Ms. Rangata next to him are part of that task team. They are also investigators. We might have to add more. The investigators are not many that have to report directly to me about whether they are how the investigations are going, and if there are challenges to report directly to me. So I know that for a number of months, you and your legal team have been very helpful to the Commission. Please share with them whatever it is that you have in mind could be done to get more information, including the issue of officials who want to assist the Commission but who may be scared of certain things, and they'll report back to me, and so that we find a way of making sure that we can get as much information as possible. Yeah, okay.
No, we will do that, Chairperson.
Thank you. Yes,
That concludes the
That
evidence
concludes.
of Mr. Tukwana.
yes.
We have one short witness, Ms.
Yes.
Mukalobe, who will be dealt with by my colleague, Ms.
Yes,
Rangata.
I know that we always had in mind that there would be that witness, but I wonder whether, I know it's a very short witness, maybe he or she will be 5 minutes and maybe.
She's short.
Yeah. I think we will excuse Mr. Tugwana. You are excused, Mr. Tugwana.
Thank you, Chair.
Maybe we'll take that witness, and from what I know, the witness will talk about, it shouldn't really be more than 5 minutes. Okay, Ms. Rangata?
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you
Good
very
afternoon.
much.
Yes.
Ms. Mukalobe.
Call the witness.
Thank you, Chair. Our next witness is Ms. Mukalobe, Mpolokeng Mukalobe.
You'll have to spell the name and surname. We haven't been doing that with Mr. Tugwana. The transcribers will have to talk to
Yes,
you
yes.
people to make sure that what they will write there is something we can recognize.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Her name is Mpolokeng, Mpolokeng. Her surname is Mukalobe, Mokalobe.
Yeah,
Mpolokeng
that's fine.
Mukalobe.
Thank you. Administer the oath or affirmation.
Thank you, Chair.
Please state your full name for the record.
My name is Mpolokeng Mokalobe.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I do not have any problem.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I know that we've got challenges. It's been a long day. I'm going to try and be to the point. Ms. Mukalobe, thank
Yeah.
you very much for coming. I know that your evidence is quite limited. I'm going to take you through. The Chair, we are going to be taking this witness through a document called, if with your leave, if we can label it, it's marked Exhibit 6, X6.
The file containing the affidavit
Yes, the affidavit of Ms.
of
Mukalobe.
Ms. Mpolokeng Mukalobe will be marked Exhibit X6.
Yes, Chair,
Yes.
thank you very much. Ms. Mukalobe, you've got the annexure X6 in front of you. Can we please go to page 1? If you look at the document on your extreme upper right side, there are numbers there. It's MM01. I'll just say 1 when I call the number. So that's page 1. Can you identify that document for us?
It's an affidavit that was undersigned by Mpolokeng Mokalobe and with the ID 76091306.
Is that are those
That's
your
my-
details?
Yeah, those are my
Thank
ID
you.
numbers.
If you turn to page 8, are you there?
Yes, I am there.
Yes, there's a signature there just under that is all I wish. Is that your signature? On page
Yes.
8?
Well,
that
there are
is my
3
signature.
signatures there on that page.
I beg your pardon, Chair?
There are 3 signatures on that page.
Yes.
Which
the-
one are you talking about?
There's
Tell me.
one just after the sentence that is all. That's the first signature
The first signature on the page.
on the page, yes, Chair. On page 8.
Yeah. Whose signature is that?
That is my signature.
Okay.
And the second signature just almost in the middle of the page. Is that your
It's
signature?
my signature.
Thank you. I would want to believe that you've read the document. Do you agree to the contents and the correctness and truthfulness of the document?
I agree to the.
Thank you. Chair, I'm going to take this witness through this.
I'm sorry, you deposed to this affidavit on the 12th of August 2019, is that right?
That is right, Chair.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Ratang?
Thank you. I'm on page 1 of the affidavit,
Yes.
under paragraph 2. Can you just read it into the record? I depose.
I depose to this affidavit with the aim to provide the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture with information at my disposal in relation to my knowledge about the City of Tomorrow project.
Thank you. So your evidence today will be restricted and limited only to that aspect relating to the City of Tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you very much. What are you doing currently? What is your position currently?
I'm sorry, Ms. Rangata.
Yes, Chair.
Isn't her evidence simply about identifying whether a certain signature is Mr. Dugwana's
Yes, Chair.
signatures? I think you must just go there.
Thank you, Chair.
She must indicate if she knows Mr. Dugwana's signature, how she knew it, and
Thank you.
and indicate which one, whether a particular one is Mr. Dugwana's signature. So that's all we need.
Thank you, Chair. From the evidence that from the affidavit, you've indicated that you consulted with the investigators of the Commission.
Or maybe, I'm sorry, I may be confusing you. I think you may have to let her say what her position is, which department she is now, and in which department she was at a particular time, and what her position was then, how she knows Mr.
Thank you, Chair.
Dugwana, and then go straight.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Galobe, what is your current position?
I'm currently the Director for Sector Development in the Department of Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism, and Environmental Affairs.
And when did you join the department?
I joined the department in 2008, August 2008.
Okay. I see on paragraph, I'm on page, I'm on page 2 of your affidavit, where under paragraph 4, you've mentioned that you have been part of the task team for the City of Tomorrow. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. In your involvement in that project, what was your responsibility or what was your role?
Maybe, Chair, what I can explain is the task team was not meant for the City of Tomorrow. It was a task team that was meant to be more like an engine for all high-impact projects in the Department of Economic Development at the time. It just happened that the City of Tomorrow became one of the projects that were dealt with.
Yes. In your dealing with the project, at some stage, you were provided with documents. I'm going to take you through, before I deal with how you know Mr. Dugwana, I'm going to take you through to page 5 of your affidavit. Are you there?
Yes, I am there.
Okay. On page 16, you are dealing with your consultation with the investigators of the Commission.
Yes,
On
Chair.
paragraph
Sorry,
16.
on paragraph 16, thank you. On paragraph 16, you're dealing with your consultation. And you've mentioned there under paragraph 17 that you were shown some documentation. If I go to 17.1, you've indicated a document master plan agreement as annexure MM2. Can we go to page 11 of your affidavit, or of Annexure X6? Can you see the document there? Is this what,
Yes.
is this what the investigators has shown to you?
Yes, this is the document, one of the documents that was shown to me.
Okay, and have you read the document?
I didn't go into details.
Yes.
I've just read part of the agreement.
Sorry, you just did what?
I just read part of the agreement. I didn't go through in details.
Okay, I'm just quickly going to take you to page 17. Paragraph 5, appointment and work schedule. Can you read 5.1 for the chair?
5.1 reads, Free State hereby appoints a consortium to undertake the project in accordance with the terms and conditions of this agreement, and the consortium accepts such appointment.
Thank you. I think that is sufficient. I'm going to take you to, can you please turn to page 26 of X6? Excuse me, 27, page 27. Just there, towards the bottom, there's a signature there. And just on top of that signature, there's a writing there, the provincial government of the Free State acting through its Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. Can you see just underneath there, there's a signature there? Can you see
Yes,
that
Chair.
signature?
Yes, Chair, I can.
Okay. Can you observe just below there as to what is the name of the person who signed there?
The person who signed here is M.A. Dukwana.
Yes. Can you identify with the signature? Do you know that signature?
I'm sorry. Unless you were there, and unless you're already saying you know that this is Mr. Tugwana's signature, there's just a name, M.A. Tugwana, written below the signature, and then there's a signature above.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
So I just want to make sure. I don't know whether you are going to say this is Mr. Tugwana's signature, or you are
Yes.
going to say it is not. But if you say the name of the person who signed is Mr. Tugwana, you are already saying the signature is Mr. Tugwana's signature. But you might not be intending to say that.
Yes, Chair. I
Okay.
think I might have misled her. Just under the signature, there's a name that is written there. So after you've read the name, I want to take you back to the signature. If you look at the signature
Well,
again.
she doesn't even have to look at the name. If
Oh,
she
thank
knows
you,
the
Chair.
signature, whose
Thank you, Chair.
signature it is, she might be able to say, I know whose signature this is.
Can you identify the signature that appears on that page?
Do you know that signature?
I couldn't recognize the signature from
You
the
could
time.
not recognize it.
From the time when the investigators gave me this document.
Yes.
And even now, Chair, I still think it doesn't look like, I don't know the signature.
You don't know the signature?
Yes.
Thank you. And if you turn page to page 28, there's a signature on top there. Do you know that signature?
No, I do not know the signature, Chair.
Okay.
That's the first signature on page 28, where it's
yes.
under the words, the provincial government of the Free State. You don't know that signature?
No, I don't know. the
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. We know that you're not an expert when it comes to signatures. I've shown you those two signatures in particular, and you've said that you don't know them. Can I understand, have you worked with Mr. Tugwana before?
Yes, Chair, I worked with Mr. Dugwana in the task team that we alluded to, the high impact project task team. But I was also at the time when the task team was operational, I was also head of planning. strategic planning in the department. And in the department, I usually directly with different managers, especially the head of the department and the MEC in the department. So
Okay.
that's how I got to work with Mr. Dugan.
Yes, let me ask the question. Is this signature on page 27 not Mr. Dugana's signature?
To my eyes, it doesn't look like Mr. Dugana's signature. And I'm saying that having been responsible for planning, he would sign a number of my documents, the departmental documents that would be the annual reports, and I was responsible for that. And as part of that, in terms of printing and making sure that we have those documents in the department, I would be the one responsible to source his signature, and he would normally sign on a paper, about 3 signatures, and I would take them to the printers. So I got accustomed to the signature. But when I look at it, for both signatures that I've looked at, they look different from what I was used to seeing.
Are there any particular features of this signature that you recognize that make you think it's not Mr. Dugana's signature? Or are there none? You just don't recognize it as his signature?
Thank you, Chair. I think I must repeat what she said, that I'm not a handwriting expert, but Mr. Dugana's signature was a bit broader. Was a bit broader, and I think it had two levels. If I recall well, there would be a little signature on top and a slightly another one at the bottom. But as a lame person, I would not exactly say what it is that is, but it looks different.
Okay.
Is there another signature?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
If you go back to your affidavit on page 5, you're making further reference to an appointment letter, which we'll find on page 10. Are you on page 10? Can you identify that letter?
The letter has the letterhead of a member of Executive Council. It is directed to Mr. Iqbal Sharma and Mr. John Thomas.
Yes. And the date below there?
The date that it has of the signature seemed to be the 3rd of November 2011.
Thank you. Just above the date there's a signature. Do you know that signature?
I do not know the signature.
So from what you've seen from the 2 previous signatures that we have just been through, from page 27 and page 27 and 28, would you say that the same answer applies to this one?
Yes, I would say it applies.
Okay, I just want you to read into the record on your affidavit, on page 6 of your affidavit. Maybe we should start.
I mean, what do you want her to read?
I want her to read, Chair, on the response that she provided on Annexure MM2, which appears on paragraph 18.
Yeah, but why must she read?
It just confirms what she has just...
Answer.
Sorry, Chair?
Why don't you ask her the question, let her answer? Why do you want her to read?
She already answered, Chair. I just wanted to put it formally into the record. What she says in terms of the signature, what she has actually captured, in particular paragraph 18.4.
She has already said she doesn't know these signatures. What more do you want her to say?
No, it's okay, Chair. No, she's not gonna give me a different answer. I wanted her to read it into the record. So, I think you've answered the question sufficiently. If I can just move to the last point, on paragraph 22, on page 7 of your affidavit. You've mentioned documents that you've been missing from your office.
Paragraph 22.
Page 7. Page 7, paragraph 22.
I got it.
Yes, you've made reference to documents that have gone missing. All right, on that paragraph. Do you want to quickly just explain to us how you missed the documents? Or how they went missing?
Chair, I wouldn't want, okay, the documents are missing, and I'm not very certain how they got lost or.
Yes.
And the reason is, it's documents that I dealt with in 2011, 2012, that were now filed, kept in a cabinet somewhere. And the only time I went back to look for them was when the commission came to the department and some information was requested from me. When I went to the cabinet, there was no file. It was mostly projects in there, presentations from the different projects that we were dealing with. So I wouldn't be able to tell if they were stolen, somebody took them, and it was at the time, it's after a time when we moved offices. We moved from the offices that we are. So I'm not so certain what happened to the documents, but yeah, I couldn't find the documents that were needed for us to supply the commission with.
Thank you. Except for the documents, what else went missing?
Where are we going with all of that? I thought this witness was about a signature only. And when I asked you agreed, you said that's what she's coming to testify about.
Yes, Chair. We done.
Well, maybe you know. If you know that there is something, then you can
Chair,
tell
it
me.
will just conclude what I've just asked.
Yeah, what
yes.
is that? Just repeat the question so I understand, because I must follow what the question
I
is.
asked about the documents, which she has just explained that the documents went missing, but she can't say they were stolen. So I'm asking.
Yeah, but what are the documents about?
Okay, Chair, let me leave that question. Ma'am, last question from me. I'm going to take you to page 6, paragraph 18.3. You've indicated that the name that has been spelled for Mr. Dukwana is incorrect. Can you explain why? Why do you say so?
Chair, what I indicated was that I've never come across a time when Mr. Dukwana signed and he wrote his name with a D-U-K-O-A. All the signatures that I have seen was with K-W-A in the middle. So I didn't know this name as it is written here.
Well, that can't be signatures, because the signatures, his signatures are such that you can't read any letters either. You know, you say in the names, because as I see the signatures, I don't think you can read the letters from the signature.
Chair, perhaps what I want to say is, more often than not, before you sign or after you sign, you write your name.
Yes, no, that's what I mean.
And I have never seen his name written with a D-O-A. It's always, what I've seen was always with a K-W-A.
Okay.
Thank you. Chair, that's all for this witness. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. You are excused. I think With regard to the signatures, you may have to look for a handwriting expert
Yes,
to
Chair.
assist us on
The
that.
difficulty was we couldn't obtain the original documents, but there were attempts that have been made to get the original documents.
Yeah, but even if you have a copy, it should be possible,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's been attended to, Chair.
because the handwriting expert would just need to be shown two signatures.
Yes, sir.
One being Mr. Tugwana's one,
Yes,
and then another one. Obviously, he need not be told much, or she need not be told much, and must compare the two signatures and indicate if it's the same person.
thank you, Chair. It
Yeah.
shall be done. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to adjourn, and tomorrow we start at 10. But thank you very much to everybody for all the cooperation. We adjourn.
Thank you.
All rise.